In the suburban tranquility of Rochester, New York, Vanessa Robertson, age 46, led the life emblematic of the American dream. A dedicated mother of 3 and a valued filing clerk at the iconic photography company Kodak, Vanessa's life was one interwoven with the fabric of her community. Nestled in a 4-bedroom home on a street lined with similar manifestations of middle-class aspiration, she was a figure of constancy and warmth. Vanessa's educational journey culminated with a degree from the University of Rochester, an institution renowned for its contribution to research and academia. It was here that she not only honed her professional skills but also met her husband, Andrew, forging the beginnings of their shared future. The world outside her home was in the throes of change. The news cycle of March 2010 was dominated by the Affordable Care Act debates, and the tremors of the Great Recession were still palpable in households and boardrooms alike. Kodak, once a titan of industry, was grappling with the digital revolution, its struggles an echo of the wider economic uncertainty. Despite the tumult, Vanessa's focus remained on the immediate joys and challenges of life. Her eldest was preparing for college, her middle child was navigating the throes of adolescence, and her youngest was on the cusp of celebrating her 10th birthday. Vanessa poured her dreams into her children's futures, envisioning for them a world of possibilities that perhaps she had never dared to imagine for herself. Colleagues at Kodak described Vanessa as diligent and personable, a woman who brought order to the chaos of filing with a smile that seldom waned. Friends spoke of her as the linchpin of her family, a woman whose laughter could light up a room and whose presence was a comfort in uncertain times. In the days before her untimely death, Vanessa was absorbed in the minutiae of life, from planning her daughter's birthday party to navigating the everyday demands of her job. Unbeknownst to her, the threads of her carefully woven tapestry were about to unravel in the most tragic of circumstances. On the cold morning of March 15, 2010, as Rochester residents awoke to the remnants of a winter chill, a grim discovery was made in a quiet neighborhood. At 7:30 a.m., under a slate-gray sky, the smoldering remains of what was once a family home on Maplewood Drive were found. The house, belonging to Vanessa Robertson, a 46-year-old Kodak employee, had been reduced to a blackened shell. The distressing find was made by Diana Hastings, a neighbor and longtime resident of the area. Diana, who had set out to collect her morning newspaper, was met with an acrid smell and a scene of destruction that halted her in her tracks. The Robertson residence, known for its well-kept lawn and the laughter of children, lay in ruins before her. With shaking hands, she reached for her cell phone and dialed 911, her voice quivering as she reported the catastrophe to the authorities. As news of the fire began to spread, local media outlets picked up the story, interrupting regular programming with breaking news alerts. The tragedy quickly became the talk of the town, overshadowing the usual buzz about the upcoming St. Patrick's Day celebrations and the latest reports on the health care bill making its way through Congress. Firefighters, who had battled the blaze through the night, were still on the scene, dousing the last of the smoldering embers when police arrived. It was amid this backdrop of charred timbers and the stark reality of a life interrupted that Vanessa's body was discovered. Positioned in what was once the living room, her remains bore the silent testimony to the inferno's deadly force. The community, just beginning its day, was now united in shock and mourning. The Robertsons, active members of their local church and participants in neighborhood gatherings, were well regarded, and Vanessa's death resonated with a poignant intensity. As the reality of the tragedy set in, the question on everyone's lips was whispered: how could this happen? The Rochester Police Department was swift to respond to the call from Maplewood Drive on that bleak March morning. The first officers arrived within minutes, their squad cars breaking the early silence. The scene they encountered was one of devastation. A family home, once a symbol of suburban stability, now lay in ruins, a stark contrast to the neighboring houses untouched by the tragedy. Detectives Matthew Harmon and Liana Grace, veterans of the force, were tasked with leading the investigation. They approached the scene with a practiced calm, but the gravity of the situation was not lost on them. The air was still tinged with the scent of smoke, and the debris from the fire crunched underfoot as they surveyed the damage. The crime scene was a harrowing tableau. Amidst the blackened remains of the Robertson home, Vanessa's body was found. There were no overt signs of violence, but the circumstances were suspicious enough to consider foul play. The detectives, well-versed in the grim language of crime scenes, noted the absence of personal effects that might have survived the fire, raising questions about the intensity and origin of the flames. As they cordoned off the area, Harmon and Grace directed the forensics team to begin their meticulous work. Using the latest in crime scene technology, including thermal imaging cameras to detect any residual heat sources and accelerant-sniffing dogs to trace the path of the fire, the team combed through the ashes. Every fragment was potential evidence, every clue a possible key to unraveling the mystery of Vanessa Robertson's death. The local media, already abuzz with the healthcare debates and the international headlines of Chile's recent earthquake, now had a domestic tragedy to report. Camera crews and reporters gathered at the perimeter, their lenses and microphones capturing the somber investigation for an audience grappling with the shock of the event. As the day wore on, the community awaited answers. The Rochester Police Department was under pressure to piece together the puzzle of the house fire that had claimed one of their own. For Detectives Harmon and Grace, the task was clear: to bring clarity and justice to a scene shrouded in ash and ambiguity. The investigation into Vanessa Robertson's death led detectives to the doorstep of the first suspect, Elzar Jones. At 75, Jones was a fixture in the community, known for his stern demeanor and his sprawling farmland that bordered the Robertson property. A property dispute between Jones and the Robertsons had been simmering for months, a fact that did not escape the attention of the Rochester Police Department. Elzar Jones had lived through the ebbs and flows of rural life and had seen his share of conflict over land and legacy. His farm, a once thriving enterprise, had felt the sting of the Great Recession, and the dispute with the Robertsons over a contested piece of borderland had added to the weight of his troubles. Despite his advancing years, Jones harbored dreams of leaving a prosperous and unencumbered farm to his heirs, a dream that seemed to be slipping through his fingers. When detectives Harmon and Grace arrived to question him, they found Jones in his barn, tending to his equipment, seemingly unfazed by the police presence. His response to their inquiries was laced with indignation. He vehemently denied any involvement in the fire, his voice rising above the clatter of the news reports from a radio perched on a nearby workbench, the voice of a local anchor discussing the latest unemployment figures. A stark reminder of the tense economic climate, Jones's interrogation was conducted with the precision of seasoned investigators. They probed for inconsistencies in his alibi, scrutinized his reactions, and searched for any flicker of guilt that might betray complicity. Jones, for his part, remained obstinate, his replies a mixture of defiance and exasperation. The detectives left the farm with more questions than answers. The Rochester community, still reeling from the news of the fire and the death of one of their own, watched with a mix of curiosity and concern. The investigation was unfolding under the watchful eye of a town unaccustomed to such tragedies, and the spotlight on Elzar Jones was unrelenting. As the investigation into the tragic fire progressed, detectives turned their focus to Kristen Vmont, a 35-year-old colleague of Vanessa Robertson at Kodak. Vmont, known for her ambitious streak within the company, had reportedly clashed with Vanessa on multiple occasions, leading to a palpable tension in the office that did not go unnoticed by their coworkers. Kristen had joined Kodak during a time of significant transition as the company struggled to adapt to the digital age in the wake of declining film sales, a struggle mirrored in news reports and business analyses of the time. Her aspirations to ascend the corporate ladder were well known, and she envisioned herself as a transformative figure within the company, capable of steering Kodak back to its former glory. Detectives Harmon and Grace approached the interrogation with a methodical strategy, aware of the delicate nature of office politics and the undercurrent of rivalry that could potentially motivate a crime. They questioned Kristen at the police station, where she presented herself with a composed exterior that belied the seriousness of the situation. Throughout the questioning, Kristen maintained her calm, her responses measured and deliberate. She acknowledged her professional disagreements with Vanessa, but firmly denied any personal animosity that would lead to such a heinous act. Her demeanor was cool and collected, even as the detectives pressed her on the details of her whereabouts on the night of the fire. The Rochester community, still processing the loss of one of their own, followed the case with growing interest. Local media outlets, in between updates on the latest iPad release and the unfolding healthcare debate in Washington, kept the public informed of every development. The scrutiny on Kristen Vmont intensified as the police continued to piece together the events leading up to the fire, her professional dreams and ambitions now cast in the shadow of a criminal investigation. On March 20, 2010, as the city of Rochester braced against a persistent spring drizzle, the investigation into Vanessa Robertson's death took a significant turn. Detectives Harmon and Grace received a report that breathed new life into the case. A series of anonymous, threatening emails sent to Vanessa in the weeks prior to her death had been uncovered by the department's cybercrime unit. The emails, traced back to an untraceable source, were laced with vitriol and menacing undertones, digital missives that painted a picture of someone with a vendetta against Vanessa. The discovery of these emails shifted the narrative of the investigation, suggesting that the fire might have been a premeditated act of violence rather than a tragic accident. The Rochester Police Department's response was swift and methodical. The forensics team, equipped with advanced software used to analyze digital communications, worked tirelessly to extract any metadata that might lead to the identification of the sender. Meanwhile, detectives revisited the charred remnants of the Robertson home, searching for any physical evidence that might corroborate the digital threats. The news of the threatening emails rippled through the community, which was already grappling with the economic anxieties of the time, the whispers of Kodak's financial troubles, and the broader implications of the ongoing recession. The case, with its new twist, was now the subject of fervent discussion on local radio shows and in the comment sections of online news articles, as residents of Rochester sought to make sense of the unfolding drama. As the investigation pressed forward, the police remained tight-lipped about their findings, though it was clear that the discovery of the emails had provided a new avenue of inquiry. The Rochester community watched on, hopeful that this latest development would bring them closer to understanding the events that led to the tragic loss of Vanessa Robertson. The Rochester Police Department's search for Vanessa Robertson's killer led them to a third individual of interest, George Stanovich, a 45-year-old ex-convict whose presence had been noted in the vicinity of the Robertson residence in the days preceding the fire. Stanovich, with a past marred by criminal activity, had been attempting to reintegrate into society, holding on to the dream of leaving his checkered history behind him. Stanovich's occupation since his release from prison had been sporadic, with him taking on various odd jobs around Rochester. His transient nature and proximity to the Robertsons' home during the critical time frame made him a figure of suspicion in the eyes of the detectives. Stanovich's aspirations for a normal life, free from the stigma of his past, were now overshadowed by the investigation. Detectives Harmon and Grace approached the interrogation with the intent to peel back the layers of Stanovich's recent activities. The questioning took place against the backdrop of a city still in shock, with local news outlets like WRC-TV and The Democrat and Chronicle closely following the case, providing the public with a steady stream of updates amidst their coverage of the healthcare bill's progress and the local impact of the economic downturn. During the interrogation, Stanovich's demeanor oscillated between anxious and defensive. He acknowledged his presence in the area but claimed it was innocuous, related to a potential job opportunity. His responses were tinged with the frustration of a man familiar with being on the wrong side of the law, yet he maintained his innocence regarding the fire and Vanessa's death. The Rochester community, already on edge from the recession's impact on local industry giants like Xerox and Bosch and Lohm, watched as the police delved deeper into Stanovich's alibi. With each passing day, the pressure mounted to solve the case and provide answers to a family and a city in mourning. The relentless pursuit of truth by the Rochester Police Department culminated in a revelation that would shake the foundations of the Robertson family and the community at large. Andrew Robertson, a 48-year-old engineer at Kodak and the bereaved husband of Vanessa Robertson, emerged as the prime suspect in the case. The economic strain of the Great Recession had left Andrew facing the prospect of unemployment, as Kodak, once a bastion of innovation and prosperity, was now grappling with the seismic shifts of the digital age. Andrew, described by colleagues as a pragmatic man deeply invested in his work, had been harboring a secret that would unravel his seemingly stable life. With Kodak's layoffs making headlines and the financial security of families across Rochester hanging in the balance, Andrew had been silently drowning in desperation. His dream of maintaining the comfortable life he had built for his family was slipping away, and in a moment of profound misjudgment, he set his home ablaze, intending to claim the insurance without his wife's knowledge. On that fateful March evening, as the city contended with the chill of early spring and the local news reported on the burgeoning Tea Party movement's rallies, Andrew had not realized that Vanessa would be home. The fire, intended as a desperate escape from financial ruin, instead became an act of unintended but irreversible devastation. Detectives Harmon and Grace, after painstakingly reconstructing the sequence of events and analyzing the evidence, confronted Andrew with their findings. His facade of stoicism crumbled as the implications of his actions became clear. The man who had sought to protect his family from economic hardship had instead torn it asunder. As the news of Andrew's arrest spread through Rochester, the city was left to grapple with the dichotomy of a man who was both a respected engineer and now a convicted murderer. The case, a stark reminder of the pressures that can fracture even the most ordinary lives, became a touchstone for discussions on the far-reaching effects of the recession. On the evening of March 25, 2010, under the dimming light of an overcast sky, the Rochester Police Department made a decisive move in the case of Vanessa Robertson. Andrew Robertson, a 48-year-old Kodak engineer and the unsuspecting husband-turned-suspect, was taken into custody. The city, still grappling with the economic anxieties of the recession and the uncertainty surrounding local stalwarts like Kodak, now witnessed the dramatic turn in a case that had captivated the community. The arrest occurred at Andrew's temporary residence, a modest hotel room he had retreated to amidst the investigation. Detectives Harmon and Grace, armed with evidence of his ill-fated attempt to escape financial ruin, approached with a warrant. The scene was far removed from the technological advancements and corporate strategies discussed in Kodak's boardrooms or the latest healthcare debates that dominated the airwaves. Andrew's reaction to the arrest was a complex tapestry of emotions. Surprise registered on his face, quickly followed by the dawning realization of the consequences of his actions. The man who had engineered a desperate plan to secure his family's future through an act of arson was now confronted with the irreversible outcome of his wife's death. As the news of the arrest broke, it rippled through Rochester's local media, with reporters from stations like Wham and WGC providing live updates. Breaking into scheduled programming that included March Madness basketball and the latest episodes of popular TV shows. The community, which had been following the case with bated breath, now grappled with the reality that the tragedy was rooted not in random violence but in a domestic spiral gone horribly wrong. The Robertson children, already facing the loss of their mother, were dealt another blow with the arrest of their father. The family's grief was compounded by a sense of betrayal, their private turmoil laid bare for all to see. As the details of the case unfolded, the city of Rochester bore witness to a family's heartbreak and the downfall of a man who had succumbed to the darkest reaches of despair. The trial of Andrew Robertson commenced amidst a climate of heightened public interest. The courtroom, a stage for the unfolding drama, was presided over by a sea of legal professionals, media personnel, and a community seeking closure. Helen Pierce, the prosecutor, stood as a figure of relentless justice. At 52, her reputation was that of a formidable presence in the courtroom, having navigated numerous high-profile cases with a blend of legal acumen and unwavering resolve. On the opposing side, defense attorney Sheila Keller, 47, was known for her persuasive oratory and empathetic approach to the law. Keller's task was to humanize Andrew, to cast him as a tragic figure overwhelmed by the economic pressures that had seized the nation, much like the recession's grip on Rochester's own corporate giants, Kodak and Xerox. As Pierce laid out the prosecution's case, she weaved a narrative of premeditated arson, a desperate act by a man on the brink. She referenced the digital evidence, the financial strains, and the insurance policy that pointed to a motive rooted in economic despair. The courtroom, filled with the hum of whispered speculation, was a microcosm of the wider world, where news cycles were dominated by stories of financial ruin and corporate bailouts. Keller's defense painted a different picture, that of a man who had made a catastrophic error in judgment, without malice or intent to harm his beloved wife. She highlighted Andrew's role as a provider, a man caught in an economic maelstrom that had left him floundering. Throughout the proceedings, the emotional toll on Vanessa's family was palpable. They sat, a portrait of sorrow, their presence a silent testimony to the life that had been so abruptly taken from them. The trial, unfolding under the scrutiny of local media outlets like the Democrat and Chronicle, became a somber reflection of the times, a narrative of personal tragedy against the backdrop of national economic hardship. The somber atmosphere of the Rochester courthouse was palpable as the jury returned with their verdict for Andrew Robertson. After hours of deliberation, which seemed to echo the broader societal deliberations on justice and economic hardship, the jury found Andrew guilty of manslaughter and arson. The decision reverberated through the courtroom, where the tension had been as thick as the March fog blanketing the city's skyline. Prosecutor Helen Pierce, her career marked by a string of successful convictions, stood satisfied with the outcome, believing justice had been served. The defense attorney, Sheila Keller, known for her eloquent defenses and a personal touch that often resonated with juries, was visibly subdued, his expression reflecting the weight of the verdict. The sentencing phase brought a heavy penalty as the judge, attuned to the severity of the crime and its repercussions, imposed a lengthy prison sentence. The gravity of the sentence sought to reflect not only the loss of Vanessa's life, but also the betrayal of trust and the breach of safety within the sanctity of one's home. Some in the community felt the punishment was just, considering the deliberate act of setting the fire, while others debated the role of Andrew's desperate financial circumstances, drawing parallels to the leniency shown in some corporate bailouts of the era. The impact of the sentence on Vanessa's family was complex. While some felt a measure of relief, others questioned whether any sentence could adequately address the void left behind. Friends and family, their emotions were divided on whether justice had truly been served. Local news outlets, which have been following the case with the same intensity as the national coverage of the iPad's release earlier that month, now reported on the community's reaction. The sentencing was more than a legal conclusion. It was a moment of reflection on the personal cost of the economic downturn that had swept through Rochester and the nation. In the wake of the trial that had gripped Rochester, life slowly began to move forward. The family of Vanessa Robertson, now navigating a world without her, sought solace in the support of the community and in each other. The children, bereft of both parents, faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives, their resilience a testament to their mother's enduring influence. Detectives Harmon and Grace, who had become fixtures in the media narrative surrounding the case, returned to their duties. The experience, however, left an indelible mark on their careers. They continued to serve with a renewed understanding of the complexities of human behavior and the unforeseen impacts of financial despair. The suspects who had been drawn into the case, Elzar Jones, Kristen Vmont, and George Stanovich, sought to reclaim their reputations and move past the cloud of suspicion that had briefly overshadowed their lives. Jones returned to his farm, Vmont to her ambitions at Kodak, and Stanovich to his quest for redemption. Rochester itself, a city that had witnessed the rise and fall of industrial giants, the ebb and flow of economic fortunes, and now the tragic end of one of its own, continued to evolve. The case had become a part of its history, a story recounted in the pages of the Democrat and chronicled and discussed in the quiet corners of local establishments. As the memory of the trial faded from the headlines, overtaken by coverage of the 2010 midterm elections or the latest advancements from companies like Apple, the community did not forget the lessons learned. The tragedy of Vanessa Robertson served as a stark reminder of the human cost of economic hardship, a narrative that resonated in the collective consciousness of a city all too familiar with change. Life after the trial was not just about moving on, it was about remembering and finding meaning in the aftermath of loss. For all those touched by the case, the journey forward was one paved with reflection, resilience, and a hope for a future free from such heartbreak. The case of Vanessa Robertson is a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the unforeseen consequences of desperation. In the quiet suburb of Rochester, a family was torn asunder, and a community was left to find healing in the aftermath of a tragedy that was as senseless as it was sorrowful. In the heart of the Great Lakes region, Lana Tomkins was a beacon of potential and creativity. At 26 years old, she hailed from Michigan's bustling city of Detroit, a place that, despite its economic struggles, remained a hub of artistic and cultural diversity. Lana was a graphic designer by trade, her skills honed at the College for Creative Studies, a prestigious institution known for its contribution to the arts. Her portfolio, a vibrant tapestry of digital illustrations and branding projects, was a testament to her ambition and talent. Lana's roots were firmly planted in a close-knit family. She was the youngest daughter of Michael Tomkins, a dedicated automotive engineer at General Motors, and Susan Tomkins, a librarian whose love for books was infectious. Lana's siblings, elder brother David, an up-and-coming lawyer, and sister Emily, a pediatric nurse, shared a strong bond with her, rooted in mutual respect and admiration. Her personality was a blend of warmth and determination, traits that endeared her to friends and colleagues alike. Described by her peers as the life of the party, she had an infectious laugh that could light up even the dullest of rooms. Yet, beneath her cheerful exterior lay a dreamer with aspirations that reached far beyond the confines of her current life. In the days leading up to her untimely death, Lana was brimming with excitement over her plans to expand her design business. She had recently been in talks with potential clients in Toronto, hoping to tap into the city's thriving art scene, which was abuzz with the upcoming Toronto International Film Festival's announcement of its 2009 winners. Social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, which were hitting their stride in popularity, were abuzz with her latest designs. Her journey to Toronto was not just a business trip. It was a step towards realizing her dream of becoming an internationally recognized designer. Little did she know, the city that symbolized her future aspirations would become the setting of a tragic end to a life full of promise. On December 1, 2009, as the early winter dusk cloaked the city of Toronto in shades of gray, an ominous chill settled over the bustling streets. The Canadian city, usually alive with the sound of holiday shoppers and the sight of festive decorations, was unaware of the grim discovery that would soon disrupt the seasonal cheer. At approximately 7:45 p.m., the Swiss Chalet restaurant, a Canadian staple known for its rotisserie chicken and comfort food, became a crime scene. Nestled on a busy street corner, the establishment was filled with diners seeking refuge from the biting cold that evening. Among them was Daniel Molinsky, a local librarian with a penchant for mystery novels, who had stopped by for a quick meal after a long day at the Toronto Public Library. Little did she know that she would stumble upon a real-life horror that no book could prepare her for. Upon entering the ladies' room, Janet was met with a sight that would haunt her for years to come. Lana Tomkins, a visitor from Michigan, lay lifeless on the cold-tiled floor. The victim was dressed for the winter weather, her scarf and coat a stark contrast to the stillness of her form. A luxury belt, an item far removed from the affordable indulgences typically sold in the nearby Eaton Center's holiday market, was wrapped tightly around her neck. Janet's initial shock quickly turned to action as she suppressed her panic and alerted the restaurant manager, who in turn called 911. The dispatcher, trained for emergencies, guided them through the necessary steps while ensuring that the police were promptly en route. Despite the flurry of activity, Janet remained composed, a testament to her strength even in the face of adversity. As the snowflakes of the season began to fall, casting a serene blanket over the city, the warmth inside the Swiss Chalet was irreversibly tainted by the cold reality of a life extinguished too soon. The Toronto Police Service received the distress call from the Swiss Chalet restaurant at 7:52 p.m. on that frigid December evening. Within minutes, the scene was swarming with the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, cutting through the darkness as they arrived with urgency. The first responders were met with a scene that juxtaposed the festive atmosphere typical of the season. A young woman's body lay in the solitude of the restaurant's bathroom, a place where the jovial chatter of diners was replaced by a deafening silence. Detectives James Keller and Sandra Lee, both veterans of the homicide squad, led the investigation. Keller, with his gruff demeanor and a reputation for his dogged pursuit of justice, was well known in the corridors of the 52 Division. His partner, Lee, brought a methodical and detail-oriented approach to the case, her skills honed by years on the force and a keen understanding of the city's diverse communities. The crime scene was meticulously preserved, with the area cordoned off to prevent contamination. Forensic teams donned protective suits as they entered the scene, a procedure that had become almost routine in a city that had seen its share of violent crimes. The air was thick with the scent of disinfectant, a stark contrast to the heavy aroma of gravy and fries that wafted from the kitchen. Lana Tomkins' body showed no immediate signs of a struggle, suggesting she may have known her assailant or been taken by surprise. The murder weapon, a belt from a luxury department store, hinted at a personal attack. Such items were not commonly found in the possession of the average Torontonian. As the forensic team collected evidence, they employed the latest in crime scene technology, including alternate light source imaging and 3D crime scene reconstruction, tools that were just coming into their own at the end of the decade. The meticulous collection of fingerprints and DNA samples was a race against time, with the knowledge that each passing moment could lead the killer further from their grasp. The crime had been committed with a chilling precision that left the seasoned detectives unsettled. As the night wore on, the realization that this case would not be a simple one was dawning on everyone involved. The city of Toronto, normally abuzz with excitement over the upcoming Winter City Festival, was now overshadowed by the specter of a murderer in its midst. As the investigation unfolded, attention turned to Lar Chaler, a 23-year-old janitor employed at the Swiss Chalet restaurant where Lana Tomkins' body was found. Chaler, originally from Sherbrooke, Quebec, had moved to Toronto in search of better prospects and was known among his colleagues for his quiet demeanor and punctuality. The young janitor lived a modest life in a small apartment cluttered with architectural blueprints and design magazines, remnants of his abandoned dream to become an architect. A dream thwarted by financial constraints in the global economic downturn of 2008. His social media profiles, sparse and infrequently updated, offered no insights into his personal life, presenting a challenge for the detectives trying to piece together his background. During the interrogation, held in the sterile confines of an interview room at the police station, Chaler maintained a calm exterior. The detectives, skilled in the art of questioning, probed for inconsistencies in his account of the evening in question. He claimed to have been restocking supplies at the time of the murder, a routine task that left him largely unaccounted for during the critical window. His alibi was met with skepticism. The investigators, aware of the pressures faced by service workers in the city, often highlighted in exposés by the Toronto Star, considered the possibility of a crime of opportunity. However, without a clear motive or evidence linking him to the crime, their suspicions remained unconfirmed. Throughout the questioning, Chaler cooperated fully, his responses measured and devoid of the defensiveness typical of a guilty conscience. His hands, though roughened by manual labor, showed no signs of involvement in a violent act. The detectives were left to ponder whether his calmness was a facade or a genuine indication of innocence. As the interrogation concluded, the police were no closer to proving Chavalier's involvement in the murder. The investigation would have to delve deeper into the lives of Lana Tomkins and the other individuals connected to the case to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. Nearly 4 days after the tragic discovery of Lana Tomkins, the city of Toronto was shaken once again. On December 5, 2009, Robin Quan, an 18-year-old high school student, was found dead in the bathroom of a Canadian Tire store on Yonge Street, a bustling retail hub especially crowded during the holiday season. Like Lana, Robin was strangled with a belt that seemed out of place amidst the rows of automotive parts and home essentials, a belt that, upon further investigation, was traced to the same luxury department store chain. Robin, a recent immigrant from Hong Kong, had moved to Canada with her parents in hopes of a better future. She was described by her classmates at Jarvis Collegiate Institute as a bright and ambitious student, her dreams of studying medicine at the University of Toronto driving her to excel academically. Her part-time job at Canadian Tire was a step towards independence and financial support for her education. The investigation led to an interrogation of her coworkers, one of whom was present on the evening of her death. The store manager, a middle-aged man named Douglas Peters, was visibly distraught as he recounted the events of the night. He described Robin as a diligent and reliable employee, her customer service always accompanied by a friendly smile. Social media platforms like Facebook, then at the height of their emerging influence, became a valuable tool in the investigation. Detectives scoured Robin's online interactions for any sign of conflict or distress, but found nothing beyond the usual teenage discourse and aspirations. The police, determined to find a connection between the two murders, questioned Robin's friends and family with sensitivity, understanding the cultural nuances of her community. Her parents, overwhelmed by grief, struggled to comprehend the senseless loss of their daughter, their dreams shattered in an instant. Despite the meticulous interrogation of those within Robin's immediate circle, the police found no clear motive or suspect. The killer remained at large, his or her identity shrouded in mystery, leaving the city's residents in a state of heightened anxiety and fear. The investigation took a pivotal turn on the morning of December 7, 2009. A gray overcast sky loomed over Toronto, a reflection of the somber mood that had enveloped the city since the string of unsettling murders. The crisp winter air was heavy with anticipation as the Toronto Police Service worked tirelessly to connect the dots between the two cases. A breakthrough came when a loss prevention officer from Holt Renfrew, an upscale department store renowned for its curated selection of luxury goods, contacted the authorities. The officer had been reviewing security footage as part of the store's routine protocols heightened during the holiday shopping frenzy. Amidst the footage, a figure caught their attention, a young man purchasing several high-end belts, the same type used in the murders. The surveillance video timestamp coincided with the days leading up to the first murder. The young man's face was clear, his demeanor calm as he made the transactions. The footage was promptly handed over to the police, who disseminated stills to local media outlets, including CP24 and the Globe and Mail, in a bid to solicit the public's help in identifying the individual. The response was swift. Tips flooded in, and the public's vigilance was palpable. Social media buzzed with activity as the images circulated on Twitter and Facebook, where concerned citizens shared information and expressed their unease about the brazen nature of the crimes. Detectives Keller and Lee analyzed the footage, noting the suspect's confidence and the ease with which he navigated the upscale environment. The belts, an accessory to fashion for most, had become an instrument of death in his hands. As the day progressed, the weather took a turn and light snow began to fall, blanketing the city in a deceptive calm. But the police were far from tranquil, as this new evidence presented a tangible lead. The race was on to identify the young man before he could strike again, and with the city on edge, the pressure was mounting to bring the perpetrator to justice. The investigation's urgency intensified on December 9, 2009, as another life was claimed under chillingly similar circumstances. Yra Dominguez, a 21-year-old single mother and recent immigrant from Holguin, Cuba, was found in the staff bathroom of an A&W restaurant, her life extinguished by the same method, a luxury belt, now a grim signature of the killer. Yra, who had sought a new beginning in Canada for herself and her young daughter, worked tirelessly at the counter, serving customers with a hopeful smile. Her aspirations to enroll in a nursing program at Ryerson University were fueled by a determination to provide a better life for her child. The A&W on Queen Street, often bustling with locals and tourists alike, was a stark contrast to the quiet tragedy that unfolded within its walls. The police, now grappling with a serial killer, focused their investigation on the individual captured in the Holt-Renfrew security footage. The manhunt led them to James Deacon Price, a 17-year-old high school student from one of Canada's most prestigious private schools. Deacon Price, the only child of a prominent Bay Street financier and a socialite known for her philanthropic endeavors, lived a life of privilege that was well documented in the society pages of the Toronto Star. During his interrogation, Deacon Price's demeanor was unsettling. He was neither overtly nervous nor particularly cooperative, responding to the detective's questions with a nonchalance that belied the gravity of the situation. His digital footprint revealed a trail of arrogance, with social media posts that showcased a lavish lifestyle and a sense of entitlement that was out of touch with the economic reality faced by many Torontonians post-recession. The police probed for a motive, delving into Deacon Price's past and his relationships. His peers described him as aloof and often dismissive of those he deemed beneath him. Yet, there was no clear reason why he would target victims like Lana, Robin, and Yra, women who were strangers to him, each battling their own struggles and chasing their dreams in a city that promised opportunity. As the interrogation continued, the detectives were left to ponder whether Deacon Price's actions were the result of a deeply rooted pathology or a perverse desire to exert control over the vulnerable. The answers, however, remained just out of reach, leaving the investigators to piece together the puzzle of a young man's descent into darkness. Amidst the backdrop of a snow-dusted Toronto, a narrative of privilege and malice began to unfold. By mid-December 2009, the city, usually preoccupied with the festive spirit and the recent Grey Cup victory of the Montreal Alouettes, found its attention riveted on a series of brutal murders. The common thread, a luxury belt used as a garrote, led investigators to James Deacon Price, a 17-year-old student from a prestigious private school. Deacon Price, the progeny of wealth and status, stood in stark contrast to his victims, women striving for betterment amidst the economic aftershocks that continued to reverberate from the 2008 financial crisis. His life, documented in the society pages and on nascent social media platforms, was punctuated by galas and exclusive events, a stark departure from the everyday struggles of Lana Tomkins, Quan, and Yra Dominguez. The investigation revealed a chilling portrait of the young man. Despite his seemingly idyllic upbringing, Deacon Price harbored a morbid curiosity. His internet history, scrutinized by cybercrime specialists, unveiled a fascination with the macabre and the mechanics of death, a digital trail that added a layer of complexity to the case. In a coldly calculated manner, Deacon Price had sought out his victims, each selected with a predator's precision. The belts, purchased from high-end retail stores like Holt Renfrew, were not just tools but trophies, selected to satisfy a twisted desire for power and control. It was a desire he confessed to during interrogation, stating with chilling detachment that he wanted to know what it felt like to end a life. The motive, as articulated by Deacon Price, was as banal as it was horrifying: a quest for sensation, an experiment in mortality devoid of any personal vendetta against the victims. He believed his affluent background made him untouchable, a belief that would soon be disproven by the weight of evidence against him. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, the detectives faced the daunting task of proving Deacon Price's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The city watched, its collective breath held, as the wheels of justice began to turn against a young man who had stepped far beyond the bounds of society's norms. The morning of December 11, 2009, dawned with a brittle clarity over Toronto, the city's iconic CN Tower piercing the sky of unbroken blue. The metropolitan area was still reeling from the revelations surrounding the high-profile case that had dominated headlines in the Globe and Mail and the incessant chatter on talk radio stations like CFOB. The Toronto Police Service, armed with incontrovertible evidence and a confession, prepared to make an arrest that would resonate through the corridors of power in the city. In the affluent neighborhood where James Deacon Price resided, opulent homes were adorned with tasteful Christmas decorations, a stark contrast to the somber task at hand. The young suspect, heir to a family legacy of wealth and influence, was apprehended at his family's stately residence, a place that had been featured in the glossy pages of Toronto Life magazine. The arrest was executed with precision, the culmination of countless hours of investigation by a task force determined to see justice served. Detectives Keller and Lee, accompanied by uniformed officers, approached the Deacon Price home as the first light of day reflected off the freshly fallen snow. The suspect, confronted with the reality of his situation, displayed a flicker of surprise before his expression settled into one of resigned acceptance. The reaction of Deacon Price, who had so cavalierly confessed to his heinous acts, was one of detached acknowledgement, a far cry from the arrogance he had exhibited in his online persona and in the interrogation room. As he was led away in handcuffs, the gravity of his fate seemed to settle upon him, a stark departure from the invulnerability he had once assumed. Meanwhile, the families of the victims, who had been notified of the impending arrest, experienced a tumult of emotions. Relief mingled with sorrow, the reality that nothing could bring back their loved ones setting in. The arrest, while a closure of sorts, was also a reminder of the gaping wounds left by the loss of Lana, Robin, and Ira. As the news of the arrest spread, the city of Toronto breathed a collective sigh of relief. The imminent threat was contained, but the scars left by the actions of James Deacon Price would linger in the city's collective memory for years to come. The trial of James Deacon Price commenced in the spring following a winter that had seen Toronto gripped by the chilling narrative. The old City Hall Courthouse, a Romanesque revival building that had stood as a symbol of justice since the late 1800s, was the stage for a legal battle that would capture the attention of the nation. The media, from CBC News to the smaller local outlets, were assembled, their cameras and microphones poised to document every development. The prosecution was led by Elizabeth Chester, a formidable figure with a reputation for her incisive courtroom tactics. At 45, Chester was a seasoned prosecutor, her career defined by a string of successful convictions. She approached the case with a steely determination, framing Deacon Price as a predator who had exploited his social status to carry out his crimes with a chilling sense of entitlement. The defense was in the hands of Jonathan Hale, a defense attorney known for his eloquent arguments and charismatic presence in the courtroom. Hale, at 50, had made a name for himself representing some of the city's most challenging cases. He contended that Deacon Price, despite his confession, was a product of a society that glorified wealth and neglected the mental health of its youth. Throughout the proceedings, the courtroom was heavy with emotion. The victims' families, present at each day of the trial, sat with a dignified composure that occasionally gave way to tears as the details of their loved ones' final moments were laid bare. The public gallery, often filled to capacity, listened with rapt attention as witnesses recounted the events leading up to the fateful discoveries in December 2009. As the trial progressed, the city followed the unfolding drama, the case becoming a topic of heated discussion on platforms like Twitter, where the hashtag Deacon Price trial trended for weeks. The trial not only questioned the morality of the accused, but also held up a mirror to the societal divisions and disparities that had allowed such a tragedy to occur. The courtroom was hushed as the trial of James Deacon Price reached its climax. After weeks of intense deliberations and testimonies that had been scrutinized by legal experts and armchair analysts alike on forums and in the comment sections of the Toronto Sun, the moment of reckoning had arrived. The city, still under the shadow of the atrocities, awaited justice for Lana, Robin, and Yra. Elizabeth Chester, her arguments grounded in the stark reality of the evidence, had painted a portrait of a remorseless killer in Deacon Price. The defense, led by Jonathan Hale, had sought to humanize the accused, emphasizing his youth and the psychological complexities that may have led to his actions. The jury, faced with the weight of their civic duty, retreated to consider the fate of the young man whose privileged life had taken such a dark turn. The verdict was delivered on a day that saw the streets of Toronto bustling with the usual cadence of city life, the conversations of passers-by punctuated by the latest hits playing from the storefronts of HMV and Virgin Megastore. Guilty on all counts, the words echoed through the courtroom, a solemn affirmation of the justice system's resolve. Sentencing followed, the judge imposing a life sentence without the possibility of parole for 25 years. The punishment, while severe, sparked debate across the city's diverse neighborhoods and in the opinion columns of the Globe and Mail. Some argued that the sentence was too lenient for the gravity of the crimes, while others pondered the effectiveness of retribution over rehabilitation. For the victims' families, the sentencing brought a measure of closure, though the verdict could not fill the void left by their loss. Their reactions were a blend of relief and sorrow, a complex tapestry of emotions that reflected the irrevocable impact of the crimes. The verdict's ripple effects extended beyond the courtroom, igniting conversations about the societal implications of the case and the nature of justice. As the city moved forward, the legacy of the trial remained, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the profound consequences of one individual's actions. The conclusion of the trial marked a new chapter for the city of Toronto. As the winter of 2009 became a memory and the cityscape bloomed with the arrival of spring, the community sought to rebuild and find a sense of normalcy after the harrowing events that had unfolded. The bustling streets, once the backdrop for a narrative of horror, slowly returned to their former rhythm, the vibrant pulse of Canada's largest city undiminished. The families of Lana Tomkins, Robin Quan, and Yra Dominguez faced the daunting task of moving forward without their loved ones. Their grief was a private affair, each finding solace in different ways, some through advocacy and speaking out against violence, others in the quiet remembrance of the lives so cruelly taken. The pain of loss was a constant companion, but so too was the strength they found in their communities and in each other. Detectives Keller and Lee, the faces of the investigation, received commendations for their work. Yet the accolades did little to erase the images and testimonies that would linger in their minds long after the case was closed. They continued their service, their resolve strengthened by the knowledge that their efforts had brought a measure of justice to the bereaved. As for James Deacon Price, his conviction and subsequent incarceration became the subject of continued media interest. True crime podcasts and television specials analyzed every facet of the case, from his privileged upbringing to the psychological profile that emerged during the trial. In prison, Deacon Price became another inmate, his notoriety a stark departure from the life of luxury he had once known. The broader community grappled with the implications of the case, discussions about mental health, societal privilege, and the criminal justice system taking center stage in university lectures and coffee shop debates. The murders had left an indelible mark on the city's consciousness, prompting reflection on the vulnerabilities and inequalities that existed within the urban tapestry. As years passed, the case of the James Deacon Price remained a cautionary tale, a reminder of the darkness that can lie beneath a facade of normalcy in the enduring quest for justice in the face of senseless violence. The case of the Nepo baby serial killer serves as a grim reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind a facade of privilege. It's a story that shook Toronto and one that true crime case files will never forget. In the heart of Orlando, Florida, during the hot summer of July 2011, lived Evan and Danielle Shaun Essy, both 44, with their 3 children. Their life was not what most would consider typical. Evan served the community as a Unitarian minister, known for his engaging sermons and compassionate nature. Danielle, who was also a Unitarian minister, was a woman of ambition and adventure, always seeking new experiences. The Shaun Essys were advocates for an open marriage, a lifestyle choice where partners agree it's acceptable to have sexual relationships outside of their marriage. This was symbolized by an upside-down pineapple sticker on their SUV, a symbol of the swinger lifestyle. They were open and proud of their lifestyle, hoping to foster a community built on the principles of sex and love without restrictions and acceptance of different ways of living. They were featured in a 2010 documentary called Love Unlimited: Polyamory in America, where they shared their experiences and beliefs about non-monogamy. They also ran a blog where they discussed topics such as spirituality, sexuality, and social justice. Their views on love and relationships made them stand out in Orlando, a city buzzing with life due to its attractions like Disney World and Universal Studios, which were drawing crowds eager to experience the new wizarding world of Harry Potter that had opened the previous year. Amidst this backdrop of fantasy and excitement, the Shaun Essys pursued their dream of a progressive community. However, their unconventional life was not without its challenges. Evan and Danielle navigated the complexities of their open marriage while juggling responsibilities as parents and professionals. They were determined to live authentically, despite societal norms that often clashed with their values. As July 2011 unfolded, the Shaun Essys found themselves at a crossroads, their lives entangled in a web of love, betrayal, and addiction. Their story is a stark reminder of the delicate balance between freedom and responsibility and the unforeseen consequences that can arise from pushing the boundaries of sexual relationships. On the evening of July 15, 2011, a horrific crime shattered the peace and tranquility of a suburban neighborhood in Orlando, Florida. The Shaun Essy family, known for their progressive and unconventional lifestyle, became the victims of a brutal and senseless murder. Their bodies were discovered by their 15-year-old daughter, Caitlyn, who had just returned from a summer camp in North Carolina. She was greeted by a nightmarish scene of blood and carnage. As she walked into the living room, she was greeted by a scene of unimaginable horror. There, on the floor, lay the naked bodies of her parents, covered in blood and stab wounds. They had been viciously attacked by an unknown assailant who had inflicted multiple injuries on their chests, necks, and faces. The living room was a bloody mess, with furniture overturned and blood spattered on the walls and carpet. Caitlyn was overcome with shock and terror as she realized that her parents were dead. She immediately called 911, sobbing and screaming for help. Her frantic voice was recorded by the dispatcher, who tried to calm her down and get more information. "My parents are dead. They're dead. There's blood everywhere. Please, 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 help me," Caitlyn cried. The police and paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late to save the victims. Caitlyn was taken to a nearby hospital, where she was treated for shock and trauma. She was later placed in the care of her aunt, who flew in from New York. The brutal slaying of the Shaun Essy couple sent shockwave through the Orlando community, especially among their friends and fellow members of the First Unitarian Church of Orlando. The couple, who had been married for 20 years, were described by their friends and family as loving, compassionate, and adventurous people who wanted to create a more inclusive and accepting world. They had no known enemies or conflicts, which made their murder even more baffling and disturbing. Who would want to kill them, and why? These were the questions that haunted the investigators, who would face a complex and challenging case. Within minutes of receiving the frantic 911 call on July 15, 2011 from Caitlyn Shaun Essy, the Orlando Police Department dispatched a team of officers to the scene of the crime. The Shaun Essy home, located in the affluent Baldwin Park neighborhood, was cordoned off as a potential homicide site. The first responders, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, entered the house with caution, unsure of what they would find inside. What they witnessed was a scene of unimaginable horror. The living room, decorated with modern furniture and colorful artwork, was soaked with blood, the furniture overturned. On the floor, the corpses of Evan and Danielle Shaun Essy lay naked, their bodies riddled with multiple stab wounds. The couple, who had been married for 20 years, had been brutally murdered in their own home. The police quickly assessed the situation and called for backup and medical assistance. They also tried to comfort Caitlyn, who was in a state of shock and trauma. She was taken to the Orlando Regional Medical Center, where she was treated for minor injuries and psychological distress. She was later joined by her aunt, who flew in from New York to take care of her. The investigators quickly searched for any signs of forced entry, robbery, or struggle, but found none. The house was in order, except for the bloody carnage in the living room. The murder weapon, a knife, was nowhere to be found. The only clue they had was a partial fingerprint found on the door handle, which they hoped would match someone in their database, along with a faint footprint on the carpet, possibly belonging to the killer. Detective Domingo was baffled by the motive and the identity of the murderer. Who would want to kill the Shaun Essys, a well-liked and respected couple in the community? What was the reason behind this savage and senseless act of violence? They had no enemies or conflicts as far as anyone knew, which made their murder even more baffling and disturbing. The police vowed to find the killer and bring justice to the Shaun Essy family, who had lost two of their own in a senseless and savage act of violence. The police had a first suspect in their sights, Caitlyn Shaun Essy, the 15-year-old daughter of Evan and Danielle Shaun Essy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who were stabbed to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. Caitlyn, who had discovered her parents' bodies after returning from a summer camp in North Carolina, was the only person in the house at the time of the murder. She was also the one who called 911, alerting the authorities to the horrific crime. The police wondered if she had a motive to kill her parents, who had a history of inviting strangers into their bed for sex as part of their unconventional lifestyle. They also questioned her alibi, which was based on the testimony of her camp counselors and fellow campers. The police interrogated Caitlyn, hoping to find cracks in her story or signs of guilt. Caitlyn, however, maintained her innocence, insisting that she had nothing to do with her parents' deaths. She cooperated with the police, providing them with access to her phone, computer, and social media accounts. She also agreed to take a polygraph test, which she passed. Caitlyn, who was in a state of shock and grief, expressed her anger and confusion at being accused of such a heinous act. She also broke down in tears as she mourned the loss of her beloved parents. She was supported by her aunt, Edwina, who flew in from New York to take care of her. She also received counseling and therapy as she tried to cope with the trauma and the stress of the investigation. Caitlyn, who was a bright and cheerful girl, had her life turned upside down by the tragic events that unfolded. She was a sophomore at Lake Highland Preparatory School, where she was an honors student and a member of the drama club. She had a passion for music and theater and dreamed of becoming a Broadway star. Caitlyn, who had no history of violence or mental illness, was a victim of a brutal crime that robbed her of her family and her innocence. She was also a suspect in a murder investigation that threatened to ruin her reputation and her future. The police turned their attention to Dominic and Allison Rothman, close friends of Evan and Danielle Shaun Essy and fellow practitioners of the open marriage lifestyle. The Rothmans, both in their 40s, were successful professionals and parents of two. Dominic was a lawyer and Allison was a real estate agent. They had met the Shaun Essys at a swingers club in Orlando, where they had bonded over their shared interest in polyamory, the practice of having multiple consensual romantic and sexual relationships. The couples had become inseparable, spending weekends together, even going on vacations as a blended family. They had also appeared in the 2010 documentary Love Unlimited, Polyamory in America, where they had discussed their views and experiences on non-monogamy. The police interrogated the Rothmans, wondering if they had any motive or involvement in the brutal murders of their friends. They asked them about their whereabouts on the night of the crime, their relationship with the victims, and their knowledge of any enemies or threats. The Rothmans cooperated with the police, providing them with alibis, phone records, and testimonies from other witnesses. They also denied any role in the killings, expressing their shock and sorrow at the loss of their friends. They claimed that they had a loving and respectful romantic and sexual relationship with the Shaun Essys, and that they had no reason to harm them. They also said that they were unaware of any conflicts or problems that the Shaun Essys had with anyone else. The Rothmans, who had lived a harmonious yet unconventional life, saw their dreams shattered by the tragic events that unfolded. They were not only grieving for their friends, but also facing suspicion and scrutiny from the authorities, the media, and the public. They were also worried about the impact of the investigation on their children and their careers. The Rothmans, who had embraced a lifestyle of freedom and sexual exploration, found themselves trapped in a nightmare of violence and mystery. The mystery of the Shaun Essy murders took a dramatic turn on July 25, 2011, when the Orlando police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, made a stunning discovery. In a remote wooded area, about a mile away from the Shaun Essy residence, they unearthed a knife that was covered in blood and dirt. The knife, a 10-inch chef's knife that had been purchased from a Walmart store in Orlando on July 14, 2011, the day before the murders, matched the description of the murder weapon given by the medical examiner. The knife had been used to inflict multiple stab wounds to the chest, neck, and face of Evan and Danielle Shaun Essy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who had been killed in their home on July 15, 2011. The police seized the knife and sent it to the crime lab for analysis. The results confirmed their suspicions. The knife had traces of the victim's blood and DNA, as well as the DNA of another person. The police ran the DNA profile through their database, hoping to find a match. They hit the jackpot. The DNA belonged to Steve Bwick, a 54-year-old man with a criminal record and a history of drug abuse. The police had a new person of interest in the case, and they wasted no time in tracking him down. The police had found a possible killer, and they had the proof to back it up. The discovery of the knife was a major breakthrough in the case, as it provided the police with a solid lead. But still, there were questions. How had Steve met the Shaun Essys? Was it at a swingers club, and had he been invited to join them for a night of sex? Had he snapped and stabbed them to death in a drug-fueled frenzy? The police had a person of interest in their sights, Steve Bwick, a 54-year-old man whose sedan was seen near the Shaun Essy residence on the night of the murder. Steve, an ex-felon with a troubled past and a history of drug abuse, became the prime suspect after his DNA was found on the knife that was used to kill Evan and Daniel Shaun Essy. The Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who were stabbed to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. The police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, tracked down Steve to a motel in Kissimmee, Florida, where he was staying in a room that contained more evidence of his involvement in the crime. The police surrounded the motel and knocked on the door of his room. Steve, who was high on bath salts at the time, opened the door and saw the police. He panicked and tried to run, but the police tackled him and arrested him. That night they interrogated him, trying to get him to confess and explain his motive. Steve, however, denied any involvement in the gruesome crime, claiming that he had never met the Shaun Essys and that he had nothing to do with their deaths. He expressed his anger and frustration at being accused of such a heinous act, casting down on the authorities' suspicions. Steve, who had lived a life of addiction and crime, was facing the most serious question of his life. Had he killed the Shaun Essys in a drug-fueled frenzy? The shocking truth behind the Shaun Essy murders was finally revealed. The killer was none other than Steve Bwick, a 54-year-old man who had been high on bath salts, a dangerous synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. Bath salts, which mimic the effects of cocaine and methamphetamine, can cause paranoia, hallucinations, and aggression. Steve had met Evan and Danielle Shaun Essy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates, at a swingers club in Orlando, where they had invited him to join them for a night of sex at their home. Unbeknownst to them, Steve had taken bath salts before arriving at their house. In a drug-induced frenzy, he attacked them with a knife that he had bought from a Walmart store the day before. He stabbed them repeatedly, mutilating their faces and bodies. He then fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of blood and evidence. The police, who had been investigating the case for 10 days, found the knife buried in a nearby wooded area, where it had Steve's DNA and the victim's blood on it. They arrested him and searched his room, where they found more proof of his guilt: a receipt for the purchase of the knife, a pair of blood-stained jeans and shoes, and a bag of bath salts. Steve, who had a criminal record and a history of drug abuse, denied any involvement in the crime, claiming that he had never met the Shaun Essys and that he had nothing to do with their deaths. He was lying, and the police had the DNA evidence to prove it. Steve, who had betrayed the trust of the Shaun Essys and killed them in a drug-fueled rage, was facing 2 counts of first-degree murder and the wrath of an angry public, who were outraged and horrified by his actions they had seen on TV or online. The final chapter in the Shaun Essy murder case was written in a Florida courtroom, where the killer, Steve Bwick, faced the consequences of his actions. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Miles Ocampo, a veteran of high-profile cases, presented a strong case against Bwick, who had stabbed Evan and Danielle Shaun Essy to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. Ocampo showed the jury the gruesome photos of the crime scene, the bloodstained knife that was used as the murder weapon, and the DNA evidence that linked Bwick to the killings. He also played the 911 call made by the victim's daughter, Caitlyn, who had discovered her parents' bodies, and the testimony of the police officers who had arrested Bwick at a motel in Kissimmee, Florida, where he had been staying with a bag of bath salts, a synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. Ocampo portrayed Bwick as a cold-blooded killer who had betrayed the trust of the Shaun Essys, who had invited him to join them for a night of sex and had killed them in a drug-fueled frenzy. He asked the jury to deliver justice for the Shaun Essy family, who had suffered a devastating loss. The defense attorney, Mitchell Raimundo, a public defender who had taken on Bwick's case, argued for a different verdict. He claimed that Bwick was not guilty by reason of insanity and that he had been under the influence of bath salts, which had caused him to lose touch with reality and act impulsively. He said that Bwick had a history of mental illness and drug abuse and that he needed treatment, not punishment. He appealed to the jury's compassion and understanding and asked them to spare Bwick's life. The victim's family, who had been following the trial closely, watched as the jury deliberated for 2 hours before returning with their verdict. They found Bwick guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a mix of emotions to the courtroom. Some felt that the verdict was too lenient and that Bwick deserved the death penalty. Others felt that the verdict was fair and that Bwick would pay for his crimes for the rest of his life. The impact of the verdict rippled through the lives of all involved, forever altering their perception of the world. The trial of Steve Bwick, the bath salts killer who brutally murdered Evan and Danielle Shaun Essy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates, in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011, left a lasting impact on the lives of those who were touched by the tragedy. Caitlyn Shaun Essy, the 15-year-old daughter of the victims who had found their mutilated bodies, was traumatized by the horrific ordeal. She sought solace and therapy in the support of her extended family, who had long presumed her parents dead. She also received an outpouring of sympathy from the public, who donated over $100,000 to a fund set up by the Miami Herald to help her with her education and future. Dominic and Allison Rothman, the close friends of the Shaun Essy family and fellow proponents of the non-monogamous lifestyle, were scarred by the suspicion cast upon them by the police and the media. They distanced themselves from the open marriage scene, which have been growing in popularity in Florida and across the country. They focused on healing their own relationship and coping with the loss of their friends. The police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, who had worked tirelessly to solve the case and bring the killer to justice, were forever marked by the horrors they witnessed. They continued their efforts to combat the rising threat of bath salts, a synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. They also praised the bravery and cooperation of the witnesses in the victim's family, who had helped them with the investigation. And the Shaun Essy family, who had been estranged from Evan and Danielle for years, were forever scarred by the loss of their loved ones. They found strength in their shared memories and the love that remained. They also learned to accept and respect the choices that Evan and Danielle had made and the legacy that they had left behind. Our story begins with Tanya Deeno, a 27-year-old manager of a chain of local convenience stores, was known for her unpredictable behavior. Despite her occasional burst of tears and psychotically furious outbursts, Tanya possessed a dreamy demeanor that captivated those around her. Her family and friends described her as a woman with grand aspirations, yearning for a life filled with love and success. In the days leading up to her untimely demise, Tanya was filled with excitement and anticipation, eagerly awaiting her honeymoon in the Bahamas. Tanya's wedding day was a picturesque affair, set against the backdrop of the stunning Canadian Rockies. The ceremony took place at the historic Fairmont Palazzo Hotel, a renowned venue known for hosting extravagant events. The grandeur of the occasion was further enhanced by the presence of notable guests, including local celebrities and prominent figures from Calgary's high society. The wedding reception was a lavish affair, with an opulent feast prepared by one of Calgary's most renowned chefs. The tables were adorned with exquisite floral arrangements created by the renowned local florist, Sarah Richardson. The atmosphere was charged with excitement and joy as the guests danced to the tunes of the popular band, Duran Duran, who were at the height of their fame in 1984. However, amidst the celebration, a sense of unease lingered in the air. Tanya's erratic behavior throughout the day had raised eyebrows and whispered concerns among the attendees. Some speculated that the pressure of the wedding had taken its toll on her, while others whispered about a troubled past that haunted her. As the evening progressed, Tanya's mood seemed to darken. She retreated to a secluded corner of the reception hall, tears streaming down her face. Concerned friends and family members attempted to console her, but their efforts were in vain. Tanya's anguish seemed impenetrable, as if she carried a burden that no one could understand. Little did anyone know that this would be the last time they would see Tanya alive. In the early hours of the following morning, tragedy struck. Tanya Deeno was found lifeless in her hotel room, her dreams of a blissful honeymoon shattered. And so, the investigation begins. What led to Tanya's untimely demise? Was it a case of foul play or a tragic accident? In the heart of Calgary, a city known for its picturesque landscapes and vibrant culture, a shocking crime unfolded on a day that was meant to be filled with joy and celebration. Tanya Deeno, a 27-year-old manager of a chain of local convenience stores, was about to embark on a new chapter of her life as a married woman. Little did she know that her wedding day would be marred by tragedy, leaving a community in shock and searching for answers. Tanya, described as a woman with a mix of unpredictable behavior and a dreamy demeanor, had captured the attention of those around her. Her family and friends knew her as someone with grand aspirations, yearning for a life filled with love and success. As the days leading up to her wedding approached, Tanya's excitement and anticipation were palpable. The couple had planned a romantic honeymoon in the Bahamas, a destination that symbolized the beginning of their journey together. But fate had a different plan in store for Tanya and her newlywed husband, Rick Deacon. Just 2 hours before they were scheduled to depart for their dream honeymoon, tragedy struck. Tanya's lifeless body was discovered in the honeymoon suite, her head brutally smashed against the shower wall, forever shattering the dreams and hopes of a promising future. Rick, who had returned to the suite to retrieve his forgotten wallet, was the one to stumble upon the gruesome scene. The shock and horror of this discovery overwhelmed him, leaving the community divided on his reaction. Some witnesses claimed that Rick appeared strangely calm and collected, while others insisted that he was visibly shaken and distraught, unable to comprehend the magnitude of the tragedy that had befallen his beloved bride. As the investigation into Tanya's untimely demise unfolded, the authorities meticulously combed through every detail, leaving no stone unturned. The search for the truth behind Tanya Deeno's tragic end continues. As investigators delve into the case, they uncover a web of secrets and hidden motives that could hold the key to unraveling this chilling mystery. The police swiftly responded to the distressing scene at the honeymoon suite, determined to uncover the truth behind the tragic death of Tanya Deeno. Led by seasoned investigators, Detectives Greg Johnson and Pierre Rambo, the team meticulously examined every inch of the crime scene, leaving no stone unturned. The suite, once a place of joy and anticipation, had transformed into a chilling sight, with bloodstains marking the walls like a macabre canvas. The investigators discovered that Tanya had met a violent end, her life cruelly taken by blunt force trauma to her head. The murder weapon, shockingly, was believed to be the shower wall itself. This revelation sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Calgary, Alberta, as they grappled with the horrifying reality that such a heinous crime could occur in their midst. As the investigation unfolded, the police meticulously combed through the suite, collecting and cataloging every piece of evidence. They meticulously documented each detail, creating a comprehensive record of the crime scene. The room was meticulously photographed, capturing the bloodstains, the shattered glass, and the haunting stillness that hung in the air. Detectives Johnson and Rambo interviewed witnesses, friends, and family members, piecing together the events leading up to Tanya's untimely demise. They retraced her steps from the moment she woke up on that fateful day to the tragic discovery of her lifeless body. The investigators examined Tanya's personal belongings, searching for any clues that might shed light on the motive behind this senseless act of violence. News of the murder spread through the city, captivating the attention of the public. The local newspapers, such as the Calgary Herald, dedicated coverage to the case, with headlines that screamed of a shocking crime that had shattered the tranquility of the city. Television news programs, like CBC News, dedicated segments to the investigation, urging anyone with information to come forward. The police, driven by a relentless pursuit of justice, worked tirelessly to solve the case. They consulted forensic experts, analyzed fingerprints, and conducted interviews with potential suspects. The investigation took them down a labyrinth of leads and possibilities, each one meticulously examined and evaluated. As the days turned into weeks, the city of Calgary remained on edge, anxiously awaiting answers to the questions that haunted their collective consciousness. Who could have committed such a heinous act? Was it a crime of passion, or was there something more sinister at play? The investigators remained tight-lipped, their determination unwavering, as they continued to piece together the puzzle that was Tanya Deeno's murder. The primary suspect in the gruesome crime that shocked the city of Calgary in August 1984 was none other than Rick Deacon, the newlywed husband of the late Tanya Deeno. As the investigation unfolded, all eyes turned to Rick, a 28-year-old man of reserved demeanor and few words. The police, driven by their determination to uncover the truth, delved into Rick's life, searching for any hidden secrets that might shed light on the tragic events that unfolded on that fateful day. Rick Dubinko, a man with a calm exterior that belied the storm within, found himself under intense scrutiny. The detectives, led by the seasoned investigators Detectives Johnson and Rambo, interrogated Rick extensively in an effort to discern any signs of guilt or involvement. The interrogation room, a sterile and dimly lit space, became the battleground where truth and deception clashed. During the grueling questioning, Rick maintained his innocence, his voice steady and unwavering. The detectives probed into his background, meticulously piecing together the puzzle of his life. They discovered that Rick had grown up in a small town on the outskirts of Calgary, where he had led a relatively unremarkable existence. He had attended the local high school, graduating with average grades and no notable achievements. In the months leading up to the ill-fated wedding, Rick had been working as a junior accountant at a prominent firm in downtown Calgary. His colleagues described him as a diligent worker, always punctual and meticulous in his tasks. However, his reserved nature had made it difficult for them to truly know him on a personal level. As the detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a few peculiar details about Rick's life. They discovered that he had recently purchased a life insurance policy, naming Tanya as the beneficiary. This revelation raised eyebrows and fueled speculation about Rick's motives. Was he driven by a desire for financial gain? Or was there another, more sinister reason behind his actions? As the investigation into the tragic death of Tanya Dubinko unfolded, a new suspect emerged, adding another layer of complexity to the case. This potential suspect was none other than Frank Pelly, Jr., a well-respected hockey coach at the local high school and the father of the deceased bride. Frank's involvement in this chilling crime stemmed from a shocking revelation that took place just moments before the wedding ceremony. It was on that fateful day in February of 1984 when Frank stumbled upon an illicit affair between Rick Dubinko, Tanya's newlywed husband, and Maria Janet Bosow, one of the bridesmaids. The discovery of this affair left Frank seething with anger and a burning desire for revenge. Eyewitnesses recounted the scene with vivid detail, describing Frank's face turning red with fury as he confronted the illicit couple. The tension in the air was palpable as Frank's booming voice echoed through the halls of the wedding venue. The fallout from this explosive confrontation reverberated through Calgary, Alberta. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by the local media's insatiable appetite for scandalous stories. The incident quickly became news, capturing the attention of residents as they sipped their Tim Hortons coffee and flipped through the pages of the Calgary Herald. As the police delved deeper into the case, they meticulously examined Frank's possible motives and involvement in Tanya's murder. They uncovered a man consumed by anger and a burning desire for justice. Frank's love for his daughter was undeniable, but did this love extend to the unthinkable act of murder? Investigators combed through Frank's personal life, interviewing friends, family, and colleagues. They discovered a history of heated arguments and moments of explosive rage. Frank's reputation as a passionate hockey coach was juxtaposed with this darker side, leaving many wondering if his fiery temperament had crossed a line. The investigation into Frank's possible involvement in Tanya's murder continued, with detectives painstakingly gathering evidence and piecing together the puzzle of that fateful day. The truth remained elusive, hidden beneath layers of secrets and emotions. As the community held its breath, waiting for answers, one thing became clear: the search for justice in the case of Tanya Dubinko's murder was far from over. The quest to uncover the truth would require perseverance, determination, and a relentless pursuit of justice. In the ongoing investigation into the shocking murder of Tanya Dubinko, a new suspect emerged, casting doubt on the previously considered individuals. Maria Janet Bosow, the bridesmaid and alleged lover of Tanya's husband, Rick Dubinko, found herself under the intense scrutiny of the police. Maria, a 25-year-old woman entangled in a web of forbidden love and deceit, became a person of interest in this perplexing case. Maria Janet Bosow, a young woman with a captivating presence, had long been a close friend of Tanya's. Their friendship blossomed during their high school years, where they shared countless memories and dreams for the future. However, as the investigation unfolded, it became evident that their friendship had taken a dark turn. Sources close to the investigation revealed that Maria had been engaged in an illicit sexual affair with Rick Dubinko, Tanya's newlywed husband. The revelation of this clandestine relationship sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Calgary, Alberta. Rumors of their secret rendezvous spread like wildfire, leaving many questioning the true nature of their involvement. It was on the day of Tanya's wedding, just moments before the ceremony, that Frank Pelly, Jr., Tanya's father, and a respected hockey coach at the local high school, stumbled upon Rick and Maria engaged in sex. The sight of his daughter's husband betraying her trust ignited a fire within Frank, fueling his desire for revenge. As the police turned their attention to Maria, they sought to understand the depths of her motives. Was she driven by a consuming love for Rick, or was there something more sinister at play? Detectives meticulously combed through her personal belongings, uncovering a series of love letters exchanged between Maria and Rick, revealing the intensity of their forbidden romance. During the interrogation, Maria's demeanor varied, leaving the investigators puzzled and uncertain. At times, she appeared remorseful, her eyes welling up with tears as she recounted the events that led to Tanya's untimely demise. Yet, in the next moment, her gaze hardened and her words became guarded, hinting at a hidden truth that she was unwilling to reveal. As the investigation continued, the police were determined to uncover the truth behind Tanya Debenko's murder. They left no stone unturned in their pursuit of justice, meticulously examining each piece of evidence and questioning every potential suspect. After an exhaustive investigation spanning several months, the truth behind Tanya Debenko's tragic death finally came to light. The shocking revelation that her own husband, Rick Debenko, was responsible for her murder sent shockwaves through the community of Calgary, Alberta. Rick Debenko, a 28-year-old man of seemingly calm demeanor, had evidence pointing to his guilt. The motive behind this heinous crime was rooted in a web of deceit and infidelity. It was discovered that Rick had been engaged in an illicit affair with Maria Janet Bosow, one of the bridesmaids in Tanya's wedding party. According to Rick's account, Tanya confronted him with a knife, leaving him with no choice but to defend himself. In a fit of rage and self-preservation, he claimed to have struck Tanya with a fatal blow to the head, using the shower wall as the murder weapon. The grisly scene that awaited Rick when he returned to the honeymoon suite to retrieve his forgotten wallet would forever haunt the memories of those involved in this chilling case. Throughout the investigation, detectives meticulously combed through the evidence, leaving no stone unturned. The police discovered crucial details that solidified Rick's guilt, including forensic evidence linking him to the murder weapon and witnesses who testified to his volatile relationship with Tanya. In the aftermath of this tragic event, questions still lingered. What could have driven a seemingly calm and reserved man like Rick Debenko to commit such a heinous act? How did Tanya's discovery of the affair push him to the brink of violence? These questions may never be fully answered, leaving us to reflect on the dark complexities of human nature and the devastating consequences that can arise from secrets and betrayal. On February 13, 1984, the Calgary Police Department made a significant breakthrough in the investigation into the murder of Tanya Debenko. After weeks of tireless work and relentless pursuit of justice, they finally apprehended the prime suspect, Rick Debenko, Tanya's husband. The arrest took place in the early hours of the morning as the sun began to rise over the city. Under the watchful eyes of the law, Rick was taken into custody without incident. The scene outside the Debenko residence was filled with a sense of both relief and sadness as Tanya's family and friends gathered to witness the moment that would mark a turning point in their quest for justice. As news of the arrest spread, the city of Calgary was captivated by the shocking revelations surrounding the case. The story entered the local newspapers, such as the Calgary Herald and the Calgary Sun, as well as local TV news outlets like the CBC and CTV. The community was left reeling from the realization that a seemingly ordinary couple had been harboring such dark secrets. The arrest of Rick Debenko sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Calgary. Residents, still reeling from the recent Winter Olympics held in their city, were forced to confront the harsh reality that even in the aftermath of a successful international event, tragedy could strike close to home. The juxtaposition of the joy and celebration of the Olympics with the somberness of Tanya's murder created a palpable sense of unease among the residents. The Debenko family, although relieved by the arrest, knew that their journey towards healing was far from over. They would forever carry the weight of Tanya's loss, but they were determined to honor her memory and find a way to move forward. In February of 1984, the courtroom became the stage for the dramatic conclusion of the tragic tale surrounding the murder of Tanya Debenko. The prosecution, led by seasoned attorney prosecutor Helga Portescu, presented a compelling case against the prime suspect, Rick Debenko. With a mix of emotions, the victim's family watched as justice was sought for their beloved daughter. Prosecutor Portescu meticulously laid out the evidence, painting a vivid picture of Rick's guilt. She called upon witnesses who testified to Rick's affair with Maria Janet Bosow, the bridesmaid, and the motive it provided for Tanya's murder. The courtroom was captivated as the prosecution presented phone records, hotel receipts, and eyewitness accounts, all pointing to Rick's involvement in the heinous crime. Defense attorney Sully Daniels, a skilled lawyer known for his ability to cast doubt, countered the prosecution's argument. He questioned the reliability of the witnesses, suggesting they had their own motives for testifying against Rick. Daniels argued that the evidence presented was circumstantial and did not definitively prove Rick's guilt. The trial lasted for weeks, with both sides passionately presenting their case. The victim's family, their hearts heavy with grief, anxiously awaited the verdict that would determine the fate of their daughter's murderer. The media surrounding the trial was intense, with reporters from local newspapers and television stations providing updates on the proceedings. Finally, on a fateful day in February, the jury reached a decision. The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was read aloud. The judge, swayed by Rick's claims of self-defense, handed down a sentence that left many stunned. Rick Dominguez was found guilty of manslaughter, but due to the circumstances surrounding the crime, he received a lenient sentence of only 2 months in prison. The decision sparked a wave of controversy and debate. Some felt that justice had not been served, questioning the validity of the self-defense claim and the leniency of the sentence. The victim's family, torn between relief that Rick would face some form of consequence and anguish over the perceived injustice, struggled to find closure. As the trial came to a close, the effects of the verdict rippled through the lives of those involved. The victim's family, forever altered by the loss of their daughter, grappled with their perception of the justice system. The media coverage surrounding the trial slowly faded away, but the impact of Tanya Deeno's tragic death would forever be etched in the memories of those who followed the case. In the aftermath of the trial, life moved on for those involved in this tragic tale. Rick Dominguez, the man responsible for Tanya's untimely death, served his 2-month sentence behind bars. The walls of the correctional facility became his new reality, a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, Tanya's family, forever changed by the loss of their beloved daughter, found solace in their shared memories and the support of their community. They leaned on each other for strength, finding comfort in the knowledge that justice had been served, albeit with a lenient sentence. The scars left by Rick's violent act would forever haunt them, but they vowed to honor Tanya's memory by advocating for victims of domestic violence. The investigation team, led by Detectives Johnson and Rambo, continued their relentless pursuit of justice. Although the trial had concluded, their work was far from over. They were determined to ensure that cases like Tanya's would not be forgotten, and that perpetrators of such heinous crimes would be held accountable. The echoes of Tanya's murder reverberated through the lives of those involved in the investigation. The team meticulously documented every detail, creating a comprehensive case file that would serve as a reminder of the brutality and tragedy that occurred in February of 1984. Their dedication to seeking the truth was unwavering, and their efforts garnered attention from the media and the public alike. As life moved on for those involved, the scars left by this tragic tale would forever shape their future endeavors. Rick Dominguez, haunted by the weight of his actions, would carry the burden of his crime for the rest of his life. Tanya's family, determined to honor her memory, would continue to advocate for victims of domestic violence, ensuring that her story would not be forgotten. And the investigation team, driven by their pursuit of justice, would remain vigilant, ensuring that cases like Tanya's would always be remembered. As we close this chapter of True Crime Case Files, we reflect on the chilling tale of Tanya Deeno's murder. Set against the backdrop of a wedding gone awry, this story serves as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most joyous occasions. The consequences of betrayal and unchecked emotions can lead to devastating outcomes, forever altering the lives of those involved. Daisy Winnows was a pillar of the Torrington community, known for her vibrant personality and infectious smile. Widowed after the passing of her beloved husband, Carl, the previous year, Daisy channeled her energy into running a popular flower shop, aptly named Petals and Blooms. Prior to her entrepreneurial venture, she had dedicated years of her life to shaping young minds as a beloved kindergarten teacher at Torrington Elementary School. Despite her professional success, Daisy's personal life was marked by estrangement from her adult children, who resided in different states. The specifics of their fractured relationship remained a mystery to town residents, but Daisy held on to a glimmer of hope that one day they would reconcile. She yearned to witness the formation of their future families, an aspiration that fueled her every waking moment. In January of 1982, as the harsh winter gripped Torrington, Daisy's life was abruptly cut short. The news of her murder would send shockwaves through the tight-knit community, where such heinous acts were unheard of. Residents who once felt safe walking the streets at night now clutched their loved ones a little tighter, haunted by the chilling realization that evil could lurk in their midst. It was a frigid morning on January 12, 1982, in Torrington, Connecticut. The temperature had dropped to -4 degrees Fahrenheit overnight, and the town was covered in snow. Most residents were still indoors, trying to stay warm and catch up on the news. But for one young man, the day would be marked by a horrific discovery that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Wally Nathaniel, a 17-year-old high school senior, had a part-time job as a delivery boy for the local newspaper, the Register Citizen. He had been working for the paper since he was 14 and knew the town and its people well. One of his favorite stops was Petals in Bloom's, a quaint shop run by Daisy Winnows, a 67-year-old widow and former kindergarten teacher. Wally admired Daisy for her cheerful demeanor and kindness and often chatted with her when he dropped off her paper. That morning, Wally arrived at Daisy's Flowers around 9:35 a.m. as usual. He noticed that the shop's door was slightly ajar, which was unusual for Daisy and unusual given the cold weather. Wally knocked on the door, but there was no answer. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, calling out Daisy's name. What he saw next made him scream and drop his papers. Daisy was lying on the floor behind the counter, surrounded by a pool of blood. Her arms were almost cut off, and her face was unrecognizable. She had been brutally murdered, apparently with a large knife or a machete. Wally ran out of the shop, terrified, and called the police from a nearby payphone. The murder of Daisy Winnows would become a mystery that baffled authorities. Who would kill a harmless old lady in such a barbaric way? What was the motive behind this senseless crime? And where was the killer? These questions remained unanswered for months until a surprising twist in the case revealed the shocking truth behind Daisy's death. As soon as Wally Nathaniel reported his grisly discovery, the Torrington Police Department sprang into action. Within minutes, several patrol cars and an ambulance arrived at Petals and Bloom's, followed by a forensic team and 2 homicide detectives. The shop was quickly sealed off with yellow tape, and curious bystanders were kept at a distance. The detectives in charge of the case were Michael Harrison and Sarah Jones-Levy, both seasoned veterans with impressive track records. They had worked together for over 5 years and had solved some of the most challenging cases in the state. They were known for their thoroughness, professionalism, and dedication. But even they were not prepared for the horror that awaited them inside the shop. As they entered, they were greeted by a scene of carnage that made them gasp. Daisy Winnows, the victim, was lying on the floor behind the counter, her body mutilated beyond recognition. Her arms were almost severed from her torso, and her face was slashed beyond repair. She had suffered multiple stab wounds to her chest, abdomen, and neck. Blood was everywhere, staining the floor, the walls, and the flowers. The detectives quickly surveyed the scene, looking for clues. They noticed that the shop was in a state of disarray, as if a struggle had taken place. Flower pots were broken, vases were smashed, and petals were scattered. A trail of bloody footprints led from the counter to the back door, indicating that the killer had fled that way. The back door was unlocked, and there were no signs of forced entry. The detectives also spotted the murder weapon, a large cleaver, lying on a table near the door. It was covered in blood and fingerprints. The detectives wondered how the killer had obtained such a weapon and why he had left it behind. They proceeded to collect evidence, taking photos, measurements, and samples. They also interviewed Wally Nathaniel, the delivery boy who had found the body. He was still shaken by the ordeal and could not provide much information. He said he had arrived at the shop around 9:35 a.m. and had found the door slightly open. He had entered calling out Daisy's name and had seen her body. He had run out screaming and had called the police from a nearby payphone. He said he had not seen anyone else around the shop and that he had no idea who would want to kill Daisy. The detectives thanked him for his cooperation and told him they would be in touch. They then contacted the coroner, who arrived shortly after. He examined the body and confirmed that Daisy had died from blood loss due to the multiple stab wounds. He estimated that the time of death was between 9 o'clock and 9:30 a.m. based on the body temperature and rigor mortis. He also noted that Daisy had defensive wounds on her hands, suggesting that she had tried to fight off her attacker. The detectives were puzzled by the motive behind the murder. Daisy Winnows was a well-liked and respected member of the community, with no known enemies or problems. The detectives decided to look into Daisy's personal life, hoping to find some clues. They also hoped to find some witnesses who might have seen or heard something suspicious around the shop that morning. They knew they had a tough case ahead of them, and that time was of the essence. They had to catch the killer before he struck again. The first person that detectives Harrison and Jones-Levy wanted to talk to was Nick Hasselby, Daisy's boyfriend. Nick was a 41-year-old plumber who had met Daisy 6 months ago when he had fixed a leak in her shop. They had hit it off and had started dating soon after. Nick was a handsome and charming man who had a reputation for being a ladies' man. He had been married twice before and had several girlfriends in between. He was also 26 years younger than Daisy, which raised some eyebrows in the town. The detectives wondered if Nick had any motive to kill Daisy. Could he have been after her money or her shop? Could he have been jealous of her relationship with her children or someone else? Could he have been involved in some shady business or had a secret enemy? They decided to find out. They tracked down Nick at his apartment, where he lived alone. They knocked on the door and Nick opened it. He looked surprised to see them and asked them what they wanted. They told him they were investigating Daisy's murder and asked him if he could come with them to the station for some questions. Nick agreed and followed them to their car. At the station, they took Nick to an interrogation room where they asked him about his relationship with Daisy. Nick said he loved Daisy and that they were very happy together. He said he had no idea who would want to kill her or why. He said he had nothing to do with her death and that he was heartbroken by the news. He said he had last seen her the night before, when they had dinner at a local Italian restaurant, and then went back to her place. He said he had left around 11 o'clock p.m. and had gone straight home. He said he had an alibi, his neighbor, who had seen him arrive and leave his apartment. The detectives asked him if he had any problems with Daisy or anyone else. Nick said he had not, and that he got along well with everyone. He said he had no enemies, no debts, no secrets. He said he had a good job and a good life. He said he had nothing to hide. The detectives were not convinced. They pressed him harder, trying to find any inconsistencies or contradictions in his story. They asked him about his past marriages, his previous girlfriends, his financial situation, his hobbies, his friends. They asked him if he had ever been violent or had a criminal record. They asked him if he had ever cheated on Daisy or had any other lovers. They asked him if he had ever argued with Daisy or had any disagreements. They asked him if he knew anyone who might have a grudge against him or Daisy. Nick denied everything. He said he was faithful, honest, and peaceful. He said he had never hurt anyone or done anything wrong. He said he had no enemies, no rivals, no conflicts. He said he only loved Daisy and wanted to be with her. He said he was innocent and begged them to believe him. The detectives were not sure what to think. Nick seemed sincere, but also suspicious. His story was consistent, but also convenient. His alibi was solid, but also shaky. His motive was unclear, but also possible. They decided to keep him under surveillance and to check his background. They also decided to look for other suspects who might have a stronger connection to the crime. While Mick Hasselby remained a prime suspect, the detectives did not rule out other possibilities. They decided to look into the last person who had seen Daisy alive according to the shot's records. That person was Danny Waters, a 24-year-old man who had bought a bouquet of roses from Daisy at 9:15 a.m., just 20 minutes before her body was found. Danny Waters was an odd and lonely figure in the town. He lived with his mother, Carla, who ran a car wash on the outskirts of Torrington. He had no job, no friends, no hobbies. He rarely left his house except to run errands for his mother or to visit Daisy's shop. He was also illiterate, having never attended school or learned to read or write. The detectives were curious about Danny's relationship with Daisy. Why did he buy roses from her that morning? Who were they for? What did they talk about? Did he notice anything unusual or suspicious? They decided to pay him a visit. They drove to the car wash, where they found Carla Waters working. She was a 49-year-old woman with a stern and weary face. She greeted them coldly and asked them what they wanted. They told her they were investigating Daisy's murder and that they wanted to talk to Danny. Carla said Danny was not home and that he had nothing to do with Daisy's death. She said Danny was a good boy who never hurt anyone. She said Daisy was a nice lady who was kind to Danny. She said they had no reason to kill her. The detectives asked Carla if they could search her house, and she reluctantly agreed. They followed her to a small and shabby house next to the car wash. They entered and were struck by the smell of dirt and decay. They searched the house, looking for any clues or evidence. They found nothing of interest except for a cardboard box in the attic where Danny slept. Inside the box, they found a pile of books, magazines, and newspapers. They were puzzled by this, since Danny was illiterate. They asked Carla about it, and she said Danny liked to look at the pictures and that he collected them as a hobby. The detectives were not satisfied with this explanation. They took some of the books and magazines with them and left. They took them to the station, where they examined them more closely. They were shocked by what they found. The books and magazines were all about flowers, gardening, and nature. They were all marked with notes written in a childish and clumsy handwriting. The notes were simple words such as rose, sun, love. The detectives realized that these were not just pictures, but lessons. Someone had been teaching Danny to read. They wondered who that someone was, and they had a hunch. They checked the dates and titles of the books and magazines and compared them with Daisy's shop's records. They found a match. Every time Danny had bought flowers from Daisy, he had also received a book or a magazine from her. The detectives had discovered a surprising connection. Daisy, moved by Danny's illiteracy, had been secretly tutoring him in her spare time. She had been giving him books and magazines, along with notes and instructions, to help him learn to read. She had been doing this for months without anyone's knowledge. The detectives were amazed by this revelation. They wondered what Daisy's motive was and what Danny's feelings were. They wondered if this was a platonic or romantic relationship and how Carla felt about it. They wondered if this had anything to do with Daisy's murder. They decided to talk to Danny again and to find out more. The case seemed to hit a dead end as the detectives ran out of leads and suspects. Nick Hasselby and Danny Waters had solid alibis, and no other person had a clear motive or opportunity to kill Daisy. The detectives were frustrated and desperate as the media and the public demanded answers. Then, a ray of hope. A forensic technician, working on the fingerprint analysis, found a match. A single print left on the cleaver that was used as the murder weapon belonged to none other than Carla Waters, Danny's mother. The detectives were stunned by this discovery. Carla Waters had not been on their radar as she had no apparent connection to Daisy, except for being Danny's mother. She had also cooperated with the police and had allowed them to search her house. She had seemed indifferent rather than suspicious. The detectives wondered what Carla's motive was and how and why she had pulled off the crime. They decided to confront her and to get some answers. The fingerprint match was a game changer for the detectives. They had a new suspect and a new lead. They decided to dig deeper into Carla Waters' background and to find out what she was hiding. Carla Waters was a 49-year-old woman who had lived in Torrington all her life. She had never married and had raised Danny on her own. She ran a car wash on the edge of town, which she had inherited from her father. She was a quiet and reserved person who kept to herself and rarely socialized. She was also fiercely protective of Danny, whom she considered her only reason for living. The detectives also learned that Carla had a troubled past, marked by trauma and abuse. She had become pregnant with Danny at 15. She had never told anyone about it and had given birth to Danny in secret. Carla had developed a twisted form of maternal obsession, bordering on abuse. She had isolated Danny from the world and had denied him any education, socialization, or normalcy. She had forced him to eat only raw barley like a horse and had made him sleep naked in a cardboard box in the attic. She had controlled every aspect of his life and had convinced him that she was the only person who loved him and cared for him. The detectives also learned that Carla had a paranoid and delusional personality fueled by her guilt and fear. She had believed that Danny and Daisy were having sex and that they were plotting to kill her. She had spied on them and had seen them exchanging books and notes. She had misinterpreted their innocent gestures as signs of betrayal and conspiracy. She had become consumed by an irrational jealousy and had decided to take matters into her own hands. The detectives had enough evidence to arrest Carla and to confront her with the truth. They went to her house, where they found her sitting on the couch, watching a replay of Donahue. She looked calm and composed, as if nothing had happened. She greeted them politely and asked them what they wanted. They told her they had a warrant for her arrest and that they knew she had killed Daisy. They showed her the fingerprint match and the books and notes they had found in Danny's box. Carla's demeanor changed instantly. She became agitated and defensive and denied everything. She said they had no proof and that they were lying. She said she had nothing to do with Daisy's death and that she loved Danny more than anything. She said Danny and Daisy were the ones who had killed her and that they were trying to frame her. She said they were evil and that she deserved to die. The detectives were shocked by Carla's reaction. They realized that she was mentally unstable and that she had no remorse or regret. They handcuffed her and took her to their car. They also called Danny and told him what had happened. Danny was speechless and could not believe that his mother was the killer. He said he was sorry for Daisy and that he had no idea what his mother had done. The detectives had solved the case, but they had also uncovered a dark and tragic story. A story of a mother's love gone wrong and a son's life ruined. A story of a woman's madness and a town's horror. A story of a flower's beauty and a murder's brutality. The trial of Carla Waters began on March 15, 1982 at the Litchfield County Courthouse. The judge presiding over the case was William Balls, a respected and experienced jurist. The prosecutor was Emily Carter, a young and ambitious assistant district attorney. The defense attorney was Thomas Hines, a seasoned and skillful public defender. The prosecution's case was built on the fingerprint evidence, the books and notes found in Danny's box, and the testimony of Danny and the detectives. Emily Carter portrayed Carla as a cold-blooded and calculating killer who had planned and executed the murder of Daisy Winnows out of a twisted sense of control over her son. She argued that Carla had acted with premeditation and malice, and that she deserved the maximum penalty, life imprisonment without parole. The defense's case was based on Carla's mental state, her abusive past, and her lack of criminal record. Thomas Hines argued that Carla was a mentally ill and traumatized woman who had suffered from a psychotic break and had acted under the influence of a delusion. He pleaded for the jury's mercy and compassion and asked them to consider a lesser charge, manslaughter. The trial lasted for 2 weeks and was filled with dramatic and emotional moments. Daisy's friends and colleagues testified about her kindness and generosity and expressed their grief and outrage. Danny testified about his mother's abuse and his relationship with Daisy and broke down in tears. Carla testified in her own defense and maintained her innocence and her delusion and showed no remorse or empathy. The jury, composed of 6 men and 6 women, deliberated for 3 days. They reviewed the evidence, the testimonies, and the arguments. They weighed the facts, the emotions, and the law. They debated, argued, and voted. Finally, they reached a unanimous verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The verdict was announced on March 29, 1982 at 4:15 p.m. The courtroom was silent as the jury foreman read the verdict. Then a wave of reactions swept the room. Some gasped, some sobbed, some cheered. Carla Waters showed no reaction and remained expressionless. Judge Balls thanked the jury for their service and pronounced the sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He ordered Carla to be taken away and adjourned the court. For Daisy's family, the verdict was a bittersweet closure. They finally learned the truth about their mother's final days and saw justice done. But they also felt the pain of their estrangement and the loss of their chance to reconcile. They hugged each other and vowed to stay in touch. The trial of Carla Waters was over, but the aftermath of her crime was not. The lives of those affected by her actions were forever changed, and they had to find a way to move on. Danny Waters, the son of the killer and the friend of the victim, faced the most challenges. He had been freed from his mother's tyranny, but he had also lost the only person who had shown him kindness and compassion. He had to deal with the trauma of his past and the uncertainty of his future. He had to learn to read, to work, to live. He did not have to do it alone, though. He received extensive therapy and support from the community, who rallied around him and offered him help and hope. He also received a generous donation from Daisy's family, who forgave him and wished him well. He eventually found a job at a local bookstore, where he developed a passion for reading and learning. He also found love and married a young woman who accepted him for who he was. He had a son, whom he named Carl after Daisy's late husband. He never forgot Daisy and kept a picture of her in his wallet. He visited her grave every year and thanked her for changing his life. Detectives Harrison and Jones-Levy, the heroes of the case, also faced some challenges. They had witnessed one of the most tragic and twisted stories of human nature. They had seen the best and the worst of humanity, and they had been affected by it. They continued their careers, but they also sought counseling and support. They vowed to bring justice to victims and closure to their families, but they also learned to cope with their own emotions and stress. They remained partners and became friends. The town of Torrington, the scene of the crime, also faced some challenges. It had been shaken by the events of that winter and had lost some of its innocence and security. It had to deal with the stigma and the sorrow, and to rebuild its reputation and its spirit. It did not have to do it alone, though. It received support and sympathy from neighboring towns and cities, who offered their condolences and assistance. It also received recognition and praise from the state and the nation, who applauded its resilience and courage. It gradually healed and regained its peace and harmony. Daisy's flower shop, now owned by a young couple who had admired her work, remained a landmark, a silent reminder of the vibrant life cut short and the enduring complexities of the human condition. The case of Daisy Winnows serves as a chilling reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and the darkness within the human heart can manifest in unexpected forms. It is a story of love, loss, twisted obsession, and the lengths some are willing to go to in the name of a warped perception of control. It is a story that leaves a lasting impact, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of tragedy, an enduring search for truth and justice. Lawrence Peters, a 50-year-old man, was the proud owner of a thriving swimming pool supply company in the city of San Mateo in the Bay Area of Northern California. Known throughout the community for his business acumen, Lawrence was a devoted husband of 20 years to his wife Denise and a loving father to his Stanford student daughter, Jayla. He also adored his role as dog daddy to his beloved Shih Tzu, Richard Davies. Lawrence's aspirations revolved around expanding his business and providing a comfortable life for his family. September 2010 was a time of both innovation and tragedy for the residents of San Mateo. While Lawrence was planning to expand his business, the city was shaken by the San Bruno pipeline explosion, a disaster that gripped headlines and hearts alike. It was a stark reminder of life's unpredictability, echoing the unforeseen calamity that would soon befall Lawrence himself. Lawrence's business, Aquapools, had gained a reputation for its top-notch products and exceptional customer service. His success had not come easy, though. Years of hard work and dedication had transformed Aquapools into a trusted brand in the swimming pool industry. Lawrence's unwavering commitment to quality and his passion for innovation had earned him the respect of both his peers and his clients. As the days grew shorter and the air turned crisp, his latest pool cleaning robot, the AquaSweep 3000, was set to be the star attraction at the local pool and spa expo. Lawrence believed that this revolutionary device would revolutionize the pool maintenance industry, making the tedious task of cleaning pools a thing of the past. Tragically, Lawrence's ambitions were cut short. What was initially thought to be a severe illness revealed itself as something far more sinister: murder. The investigation into his death would uncover a web of deceit that ran deeper than anyone could have imagined, turning the Peters' idyllic life into a true crime case. On September 15, 2010, a serene day in San Mateo, California, the local community was struck by a harrowing event. Lawrence Peters, a 50-year-old entrepreneur known for his thriving swimming pool supply business, Aquapools, faced an untimely demise. The businessman, admired for his dedication to family and commerce, succumbed to what was initially believed to be a severe illness in his hospital room, leaving behind a legacy of success and a bewildered community. The illness that claimed Lawrence's life had taken hold 3 weeks prior, its symptoms escalating rapidly, confounding medical professionals. It was during these critical moments that his wife, Denise Peters, was by his side, witnessing his struggle. In his final moments, Lawrence uttered a puzzling phrase, "Was it my wife or my girlfriend?" Words that would later echo through the corridors of the investigation. Denise, who had shared 2 decades of marriage with Lawrence, was engulfed by a wave of emotions. Her reaction was a complex tapestry of shock, sorrow, and a hint of suspicion, reflecting the dual nature of her husband's last words. Despite the turmoil within, she promptly notified the hospital staff, clinging to a sliver of hope for Lawrence's survival. The news of Lawrence's passing reverberated beyond the confines of the hospital. In a town still reeling from the recent San Bruno pipeline explosion, this personal tragedy added to the collective sense of loss. The incident, which had dominated headlines just days earlier, now shared space with the mysterious circumstances surrounding Lawrence's death. As the investigation unfolded, it became apparent that Lawrence's demise was not a mere twist of fate, but the result of foul play. The community, which had once seen Lawrence as a pillar of entrepreneurial spirit, now grappled with the grim reality that his life had been deliberately cut short. In the backdrop of this personal tragedy, the world continued to turn, a stark contrast to the somber mood that had settled over San Mateo. The case of Lawrence Peters, a man who had aspired to elevate his business to the heights of such household names, had instead become a subject of true crime lore, leaving behind a family, a pet, and a tale of intrigue that would captivate and confound all who heard it. The investigation into the death of Lawrence Peters, a prominent businessman, began in earnest on September 15, 2010. Detectives O'Reilly and Ying arrived at the San Mateo Hospital, where Lawrence had breathed his last. The room, a sterile environment typical of medical facilities, showed no immediate signs of criminal activity. Yet the detectives were not convinced this was a natural death. As they combed through the room, the detectives took note of every detail: the IV stand, the beeping monitors now silent, and the personal effects that seemed untouched. They collected samples, knowing that the smallest clue could be the key to solving the case. The initial medical reports were vague, but toxicology would later confirm their suspicions. Lawrence had been poisoned. The question of who could commit such a heinous act loomed large. Lawrence was a well-respected figure, his company Aqua Dynamics a known name in the South Bay area. He was a family man with a wife and a daughter, and even his pet Shih Tzu, Richard Davies, who was a beloved fixture in his life. Detectives O'Reilly and Ying faced a daunting task. They needed to piece together Lawrence's final weeks, scrutinize his personal and professional relationships, and construct a timeline that could lead them to the perpetrator. The community watched, waited, and wondered who among them could be responsible for such a betrayal. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives would find themselves delving into a complex web of deceit, where business rivalries and personal vendettas blurred the lines between friend and foe. The case of Lawrence Peters was not just a local crime story. It was a narrative that would capture the attention of true crime enthusiasts. In Lawrence Peters' murder, all eyes turned to his wife, Denise Peters, as the prime suspect. At the age of 52, Denise managed a vegan bookstore in downtown San Mateo, California. She was not just Lawrence's wife, but as a published author of a popular young adult sci-fi novel, Althea and the Federation of Light, Denise was a figure of cultural significance in her own right. The police interrogated Denise with a sense of urgency, trying to uncover any possible motive for the murder. As they delved into her background, they discovered that Denise and Lawrence had been married for 20 years, seemingly living a life of wedded bliss. However, beneath the surface, there were whispers of marital discord. According to the American Center for Family Relationships, 85% of married Americans have cheated on their spouse, and Denise was no different. They discovered that Denise had been having an affair with a local businessman, Janie Trevelyan. Jamie, an 85-year-old entrepreneur who owned a chain of successful coffee shops in the Bay Area, was known for his charismatic personality and connections within the community. The police believed that this affair could be the key to understanding the motive behind Lawrence's murder. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives uncovered a series of sexually explicit text messages exchanged between Denise and Jamie during the weeks leading up to Lawrence's death. These messages hinted at a strained relationship between Denise and her husband, with discussions about leaving Lawrence and starting a new life together. The detectives also discovered that Denise had taken out a life insurance policy on Lawrence just a few months before his death, raising further suspicions. To gather more evidence, the police interviewed friends, family, and employees of both Denise and Lawrence. They discovered that Lawrence had found out about the affair before his illness and confronted Denise about it. This revelation had caused significant tension in their marriage, leading many to believe that Denise had a motive to eliminate Lawrence. As the investigation continued, the police sought to corroborate Denise's alibi during the time of Lawrence's death. They reviewed surveillance footage from the hospital and interviewed hospital staff who had interacted with Denise during that period. However, there were no solid leads or evidence to conclusively prove or disprove her involvement in the crime. As the detectives delved deeper, they considered every possibility. Was a crime of passion a result of a love triangle hinted at by Lawrence's cryptic last words? Or was it a calculated move to gain control of Lawrence's successful business, Aqua Dynamics? The answers were not forthcoming. As the investigation into the shocking murder of Lawrence Peters unfolded, another suspect emerged from the shadows. Dr. Franchesca Lu Hadti, a 39-year-old doctor at the hospital where Lawrence had met his untimely demise, became the focus of intense scrutiny. The revelation that Dr. Lu Hadti was Lawrence's secret girlfriend sent shockwaves through the community and added a new layer of complexity to the case. Dr. Lu Hadti was a respected physician, known for her dedication and expertise in the field of internal medicine. She had been working at San Mateo Hospital for 5 years, earning the trust and admiration of her colleagues. Friends and coworkers described her as intelligent, hardworking, and compassionate. However, beneath the surface, a web of secrets was about to unravel. The police wasted no time in bringing Dr. Lu Hadti in for questioning. The interrogation room was tense as detectives O'Reilly and Yane delved into the doctor's personal life, searching for any possible motive for the murder. Dr. Lu Hadti vehemently denied any involvement, her anger palpable as she defended her innocence. During the interrogation, it was revealed that Dr. Lu Hadti and Lawrence had been involved in a clandestine sexual affair for over a year. Their relationship had blossomed in the shadows, hidden from prying eyes. The detectives probed deeper, trying to understand the dynamics of their secret romance. They discovered that the affair had been fraught with tension and secrecy, as Lawrence struggled to balance his commitment to his wife and family with his desire for a passionate connection with Dr. Lu Hadti. As the investigation continued, the detectives uncovered a series of text messages exchanged between Lawrence and Dr. Lu Hadti in the weeks leading up to his death. These messages painted a picture of a troubled relationship filled with jealousy, suspicion, and betrayal. Lawrence had confided in a close friend about his fears that Dr. Lu Hadti was becoming increasingly possessive and volatile. The detectives also discovered that Dr. Lu Hadti had recently purchased a bottle of a powerful sedative, commonly used in hospitals for anesthesia. This raised suspicions about her possible involvement in Lawrence's death. However, Dr. Lu Hadti maintained that the sedative was intended for professional use and vehemently denied any sinister intentions. As the investigation reached its critical juncture, the police were left with more questions than answers. Was Dr. Lu Hadti a scorned lover seeking revenge? Or was she an innocent bystander caught in a web of deceit? The truth remained elusive, hidden behind a veil of secrecy and betrayal. The investigation into the mysterious murder of Lawrence Peters took a dramatic turn on September 20, 2010, when a crucial piece of evidence was discovered. The weather that day was gloomy, mirroring the somber mood of the investigation team as they delved deeper into the case. Detectives O'Reilly and Ying were meticulously combing through the office of Dr. Franchesca Lu Hadti, a 39-year-old doctor at the hospital where Lawrence had tragically passed away and his secret lover. It was during this search that they stumbled upon a vial of radium hidden among the doctor's belongings. Radium, a highly radioactive substance, was once used in various medical treatments and industrial applications. Its discovery in Dr. Lu Hadti's office sent shockwaves through the investigative team, raising serious questions about her possible involvement in Lawrence's death. To fully understand the significance of this finding, it is important to delve into the background of radium and its potential implications in a murder case. Featured in the Oscar-winning film Oppenheimer, radium emits harmful radiation, which can cause severe health issues, including cancer. Its usage in medical treatments has been largely phased out due to its dangerous nature. The discovery of the vial of radium in Dr. Lu Hadti's possession raises several intriguing questions. How did she acquire this highly restricted substance? What was her motive for possessing it? And most importantly, could radium have been the deadly poison that claimed Lawrence's life? As the investigation team delves deeper into Dr. Lu Hadti's involvement, they are meticulously examining her personal and professional connections. They are leaving no stone unturned in their quest for the truth. Interviews with colleagues, patients, and acquaintances of Dr. Lu Hadti are being conducted to shed light on her character and possible motives. The discovery of the vial of radium injected new life into the investigation, providing a potential breakthrough in unraveling the mystery behind Lawrence Pierre's murder. Detectives O'Reilly and Ying were determined to follow every lead, meticulously piecing together the puzzle of this perplexing crime. As the investigation intensifies, the truth inches closer to the surface. Will Dr. Lu Hadti's connection to the radium vial be the key that unlocks the secrets of Lawrence's untimely demise? In the investigation into the shocking murder of Lawrence Peters, a new suspect emerged. Lyle Deacon, a 35-year-old nurse at the hospital in San Mateo, California, where Lawrence tragically passed away. Unbeknownst to his colleagues, Lyle has a dark past as an ex-felon from Minnesota, where he committed a series of fatal poisonings at a previous hospital. The police were now focusing their attention on Lyle, exploring his personality, dreams, and potential motives in order to uncover the truth behind Lawrence's untimely demise. Lyle Deacon, a tall and wiry man with a brooding demeanor, had been working at the hospital for just over a year. Colleagues described him as introverted and mysterious, often keeping to himself during his shifts. He was known for his meticulous attention to detail when it came to patient care, but little did anyone suspect the darkness that lurked beneath his calm exterior. During the police interrogation, Lyle vehemently denied any involvement in Lawrence's murder. He claimed that his troubled past was behind him and that he had turned his life around. However, the investigators were not convinced and delved deeper into his background. The detectives discovered that Lyle had been released from prison just a few months before he started working at the San Mateo Hospital. His criminal record revealed a history of poisoning patients at a hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota, which resulted in multiple deaths. The media had dubbed him the Midwest Menace during the trial that followed. As the investigation progressed, the police uncovered a disturbing pattern. It was revealed that Lyle had a fascination with toxic substances and had been secretly researching various poisons online. They also discovered a hidden stash of chemicals in his apartment, including a vial of cyanide, a deadly poison. The detectives meticulously combed through Lyle's work history, interviewing former colleagues and patients from the Minnesota hospital. They found chilling similarities between the poisonings that occurred there and Lawrence's death. The victims had all exhibited similar symptoms, and the timeline of events matched up. The evidence against Lyle Deacon was mounting, but the investigators knew they needed more to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They continued to gather witness statements, comb through financial records, and analyze phone records for any connections to Lawrence or the other suspects. As the investigation into Lawrence Peters' murder intensified, the police remained determined to uncover the truth and bring the perpetrator to justice. With Lyle Deacon now firmly in their sights, the detectives were leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of justice for Lawrence and his grieving family. After an intense investigation, the police finally cracked the case of Lawrence Peters' murder. The mastermind behind this heinous crime had been identified as none other than Dr. Franchesca Lu Hadti, a 39-year-old doctor at the hospital where Lawrence tragically passed away. The motive behind this shocking act of violence stems from a web of deceit and betrayal. It was revealed that Dr. Lu Hadti was not only Lawrence's secret girlfriend, but also harbored deep feelings of anger and resentment towards him as a result of her severe case of codependency syndrome. In a fit of rage and vengeance, she decided to poison him, putting an end to his life and shattering the dreams of his family. The evidence against Dr. Lu Hadti was compelling. On September 20, 2010, the police made a breakthrough discovery in her office. Hidden away, they found a vial of radium, a highly toxic substance that can cause severe harm to the human body. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team, providing a crucial link between Dr. Lu Hadti and the murder of Lawrence Peters. The arrest of Dr. Lu Hadti took place on a stormy evening, reminiscent of the dark cloud that had loomed over Lawrence's family since his untimely demise. The police, acting swiftly and decisively, apprehended the doctor, who was taken aback by her own arrest. The moment was captured by the local news vans of KGO and KNTV, with cameras flashing and reporters clamoring for the latest details on this sensational case. As the news of Dr. Lu Hadti's arrest spread, Lawrence's family experienced a mix of relief and grief. Relief that the person responsible for their loved one's murder had been brought to justice, but also grief for the loss they had suffered. Their lives will never be the same, but at least they found solace in knowing the truth about what happened to Lawrence. This shocking crime and its subsequent investigation served as a reminder that even in seemingly ordinary lives, dark secrets can lurk, leading to tragic consequences. The story of Lawrence Peters' murder will forever be etched in the annals of true crime, a cautionary tale of betrayal and the pursuit of justice. The trial that followed the shocking murder of Lawrence Peters in September 2010 was a gripping courtroom drama that captivated many true crime geeks in the Bay Area. Dr. Franchesca Lu Hadti, the mastermind behind Lawrence's untimely demise, faced the consequences of her heinous act as the prosecution presented a compelling case against her. Prosecutor Bertram Holbert-Toole, a seasoned legal expert known for his meticulous approach, skillfully outlined the motive behind the murder. He painted a picture of a woman consumed by anger and betrayal, seeking revenge against a man she once loved. With the help of expert witnesses and compelling evidence, Holbert-Toole established a strong case against Dr. Lu Hadti. Defense attorney Lisa Betchworth, known for her tenacity and ability to create doubt, fought tooth and nail to establish reasonable doubt. Betchworth questioned the credibility of the evidence, pointing out potential flaws in the investigation. She argued that the vial of radium found in Dr. Lu Hadti's office could have been planted by someone else with malicious intent. Despite her efforts, the weight of the evidence against Dr. Lu Hadti proved too substantial to overcome. Throughout the trial, Lawrence's grieving family sat in the courtroom, seeking justice for their beloved husband and father. Their emotions ran high as they listened to the testimonies and examined the evidence. The pain of their loss was palpable as they clung to the hope that justice would be served. The trial lasted for weeks, with the media closely following. News outlets such as the San Mateo Tribune and the local TV station, Channel 7 News, provided daily updates on the proceedings. The courtroom was packed with reporters, eager to capture every moment of the trial for the public. After careful consideration of the evidence presented by both sides, the jury deliberated for several days. On a tense afternoon, the verdict was delivered. Dr. Franchesca Lu Hadti was found guilty of the murder of Lawrence Peters. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and grief as Lawrence's family finally received the justice they had longed for. The sentencing that followed left a lasting impact on both the murderer and the victims' families. Judge Lee Thornburg, known for her no-nonsense approach to justice, handed down a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of the sentence sank in, leaving Dr. Lu Hadti with no chance of redemption. The trial of Dr. Franchesca Lu Hadti and the subsequent verdict and sentencing marked the end of a tragic chapter in the lives of Lawrence Peters' family. The nation watched as justice was served, and debates about the adequacy of the punishment and the concept of justice raged on. After the dramatic conclusion of the trial, the lives of all those involved took a significant turn. Denise Peters, Lawrence's wife, was faced with the harsh reality of her husband's infidelity and the pain of losing him. She sought solace in the support of her close-knit community in San Mateo, California, who rallied around her during this difficult time. Dr. Franchesca Lu Hadti, the mastermind behind Lawrence's murder, faced the consequences of her actions. She was sentenced to serve time in the California State Women's Prison, where she would spend her days reflecting on the choices that led her down a dark path. Lawrence's family and friends slowly began to heal, finding solace in the cherished memories they had of him. They organized a memorial service to celebrate his life and honor his legacy. The service took place at the Stanford Memorial Church, a place Lawrence held dear to his heart. Friends and family shared heartfelt stories and anecdotes, reminiscing about his kindness, generosity, and love for his family. In the months following the trial, Denise made the difficult decision to sell Lawrence's swimming pool supply company. She wanted to start anew and create a different future for herself and her daughter. In the years that followed, Lawrence's family and friends slowly rebuilt their lives. They found solace in the memories they shared and the knowledge that justice had been served. While the pain of losing Lawrence would never fully fade, they were determined to honor his memory by living their lives to the fullest and cherishing the time they had together. And so concludes the tragic tale of Lawrence Peters, a man whose dying words sparked a murder investigation that unraveled a web of secrets and betrayal. Join us next time as we delve into another captivating true crime case. Stay tuned for more episodes of True Crime Case Files, where we uncover the darkest mysteries. Jenny Smith Brosley, a vibrant 32-year-old kindergarten teacher, resided in the peaceful city of Rochester, New York, during the fateful summer of 1993. She was known throughout the community for her cheerful disposition and unwavering kindness. Her dedication to educating young minds and spreading joy was unparalleled. Outside of the classroom, Jenny selflessly volunteered at the local animal shelter, showcasing her love for all creatures great and small. Her compassion and empathy extended to every living being she encountered. Jenny's friends adored her homemade cookies, which had become legendary for their deliciousness. They were often the highlight of community bake sales and gatherings. August of 1993 was a time of excitement and anticipation in Rochester. The city was buzzing with the upcoming Lilac Festival, an annual event that celebrated the blooming of the beautiful lilac flowers. Locals and tourists alike eagerly awaited the festivities, which promised a vibrant atmosphere filled with music, food, and art. Jenny, too, eagerly anticipated the festival. She had planned to take her kindergarten class on a field trip to Highland Park, where the festival was held. The children were excited to explore the colorful gardens and enjoy the various activities planned for them. Unfortunately, the joyous anticipation surrounding the Lilac Festival would soon be overshadowed by a devastating tragedy. On the morning of August 15th, Jenny Smith Brosley was found lifeless in her home, her vibrant spirit extinguished in a brutal act of violence. On a sweltering summer day in August 1993, tragedy befell the peaceful city of Rochester, New York. The community was left in shock and sorrow when the lifeless body of Jenny Smith Brosley, a beloved 32-year-old kindergarten teacher, was discovered in her own home. The discovery of Jenny's body was made by her sister, Sarah Canister, who had stopped by for a visit. Little did Sarah know that she would stumble upon a scene of unimaginable horror. As she entered Jenny's home, a wave of unease washed over her, sensing that something was terribly wrong. The air inside the house was thick with an oppressive stillness, broken only by the distant hum of a fan struggling to combat the relentless heat. The scent of freshly baked cookies, once a comforting aroma synonymous with Jenny's presence, hung in the air, now tainted by an underlying sense of dread. Sarah's heart sank as she reached the living room, where Jenny's lifeless body lay sprawled on the floor. Her once vibrant friend now appeared pale and lifeless, her eyes vacant and devoid of the spark that had always defined her. It was a sight that would forever haunt Sarah's memory. Overwhelmed by grief and shock, Sarah's trembling hands fumbled for the kitchen phone. She dialed the emergency number with trembling fingers, her voice quivering as she relayed the devastating news to the authorities. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. As the gravity of the situation began to unfold, news of Jenny's tragic demise spread like wildfire through the close-knit community of Rochester. The local newspaper, the Rochester Times, wasted no time in reporting the shocking incident. Local television news crews descended upon the scene, their cameras capturing the somber atmosphere that now enveloped Jenny's once vibrant neighborhood. As investigators meticulously combed through the evidence, the community remained on edge, grappling with a sense of fear and uncertainty. Who could have committed such a heinous act against a woman known for her unwavering kindness and selflessness? The answers remained elusive, leaving a city in mourning and a void that could never be filled. The Rochester Police Department wasted no time in launching a full-scale investigation into the tragic death of Jenny Smith Brosley, the beloved kindergarten teacher whose life was cut short in a heinous crime. Leading the investigation were husband and wife detective duo Joseph and Lisa Anderson, known for their relentless pursuit of justice. Arriving at the crime scene, located in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Rochester, the detectives were met with a sense of unease. The warm August air hung heavy with anticipation as they approached the modest two-story house where Jenny's lifeless body had been found. With a keen eye for detail, Detective Joseph Anderson meticulously surveyed the exterior of the house. The neatly manicured lawn, adorned with vibrant flowers, stood in stark contrast to the grim reality that awaited them inside. The front door, a sturdy oak structure, showed no signs of forced entry, leaving the detectives puzzled as to how the killer gained access to the home. As they stepped into the house, a wave of silence enveloped them. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, as if the walls themselves held the secrets to Jenny's untimely demise. The detectives were careful not to disturb any potential evidence as they made their way through the meticulously organized rooms. In the kitchen, Lisa Anderson's sharp eyes were drawn to a batch of freshly baked cookies sitting on the counter. The aroma of chocolate chips filled the room, a bittersweet reminder of the joy Jenny had brought to her students and friends. But beneath the surface of that innocent scene, a sinister truth awaited discovery. With gloved hands, Lisa carefully collected samples of the cookies, suspecting that they held the key to unraveling the mystery. The cookies were sent to the crime lab for analysis, where experts would determine if they contained traces of the lethal poison, cyanide. The meticulous work of the Anderson detectives would prove crucial in uncovering the truth behind Jenny's tragic end. With each passing day, they delved deeper into the web of deceit, determined to bring the perpetrator to justice and provide closure to a grieving community. The initial suspect in the investigation of Jenny Smith Brosley's tragic murder was none other than her estranged husband, Mark H. Smith. At 35 years old, Mark worked as an engineer for the renowned photography company, Kodak, a name that resonated with many in August of 1993. Known for his reserved nature and occasional outbursts of anger, Mark was taken into custody for questioning as the police sought to uncover any possible motive for his wife's untimely demise. As the investigation unfolded, the police delved into the couple's relationship, peeling back the layers of their troubled marriage. Neighbors recounted hearing heated arguments emanating from the Smith-Brosley residence, raising suspicions about the state of their union. Friends and colleagues were interviewed, shedding light on the couple's tumultuous history, which included allegations of infidelity and financial strain. Detectives Joseph and Lisa Anderson, a husband and wife team known for their tenacity and attention to detail, meticulously combed through Mark's personal and professional life. They scoured his workplace, questioning colleagues and superiors, hoping to unearth any clues that could connect him to the crime. The Kodak campus, a bustling hive of activity, was abuzz with speculation as news of the investigation spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, the media circus surrounding the case reached a fever pitch. Local newspapers, such as the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, dedicated column inches to dissecting the details of the crime. Television news stations, like WHEC-TV, aired dramatic reenactments of the discovery of Jenny's lifeless body, captivating audiences across the city. The community was gripped by fear and intrigue as they anxiously awaited answers to the burning question: who could have committed such a heinous act? As the investigation into Mark H. Smith continued, the police meticulously examined his alibi for the day of the murder. They interviewed co-workers, cross-referenced time cards, and scrutinized surveillance footage from nearby establishments. Despite their best efforts, no concrete evidence linking Mark to the crime could be found. His calm demeanor during questioning, although occasionally punctuated by moments of frustration, further muddled the waters of suspicion. With no smoking gun, the police were forced to widen their net and explore other leads. As the investigation took unexpected twists and turns, the truth seemed to slip further out of their grasp. The clock was ticking, and the pressure to solve the case intensified with each passing day. As the investigation into the tragic murder of Jenny Smith Brosley unfolded, the spotlight turned towards her younger sister, Sarah Canister. Sarah, a stay-at-home mom residing in the quiet city of Rochester, New York, found herself at the center of a web of suspicion. Behind Sarah's seemingly vivacious personality and quick wit, a darker side emerged. The investigators began to uncover a deep-seated jealousy that Sarah harbored towards her accomplished sister. Jenny's success as a beloved kindergarten teacher and her ability to effortlessly spread joy seemed to cast a shadow over Sarah's own life. Sarah's envy was not a well-kept secret among family and friends. She had often expressed her frustration at feeling overshadowed by Jenny's achievements. As the investigators delved deeper into Sarah's past, they discovered a pattern of attention-seeking behavior. Sarah had been known to orchestrate elaborate schemes to gain the recognition she so desperately craved. The police interrogated Sarah, carefully navigating the delicate balance between empathy and suspicion. They sought to unravel the tangled threads of her hidden motives. Sarah's charm and ability to manipulate others made the task all the more challenging. She skillfully evaded direct questions, leaving the investigators with more questions than answers. With each passing day, the web of suspicion around Sarah grew tighter. The investigators tirelessly pursued every lead, meticulously analyzing phone records, financial transactions, and witness testimonies. They sought to piece together the puzzle that would bring justice to Jenny's memory. In a significant breakthrough in the investigation into the tragic murder of beloved kindergarten teacher Jenny Smith Brosley, the police stumbled upon a hidden diary that may have held the key to unraveling the mystery. The shocking discovery of this diary, belonging to Jenny's younger sister, Sarah Canister, shed new light on the case and exposed a web of envy and resentment. On a cloudy day in late August 1993, while combing through Sarah's belongings, the investigators stumbled upon a dusty old diary tucked away in a forgotten corner of her closet. As they leafed through its pages, they were confronted with a chilling account of Sarah's deep-seated jealousy towards her sister. The diary revealed Sarah's feelings of being overshadowed by Jenny's achievements and her desperate longing for attention. The diary entries painted a vivid picture of Sarah's inner turmoil. She expressed her envy towards Jenny's popularity, her success as a teacher, and her renowned homemade cookies. Sarah's words dripped with bitterness and resentment, revealing a side of her that had remained hidden from those closest to her. The investigators were taken aback by the depth of Sarah's emotions and the lengths she was willing to go to gain the spotlight. They meticulously analyzed the diary, scrutinizing every word for clues that could link Sarah to Jenny's untimely demise. The entries hinted at a brewing storm of anger and frustration, creating a motive that the investigators had been desperately searching for. With this newfound evidence, the investigators were determined to delve deeper into Sarah's psyche, seeking to understand the extent of her resentment and whether it had driven her to commit such a heinous act. They planned to interview friends and acquaintances, hoping to uncover any additional information that could corroborate the diary's revelations. The diary had become a crucial piece in the puzzle, providing a glimpse into the mind of a potential killer. The investigators were now faced with the daunting task of connecting the dots and bringing justice to Jenny's grieving family. In the midst of the investigation into the tragic murder of Jenny Smith Brosley, a new suspect emerged from the shadows. Dr. Edward Bleach, a well-respected family physician, found himself under the scrutinizing gaze of law enforcement. The police, driven by an insatiable thirst for justice, sought to uncover the truth behind this heinous crime. Dr. Bleach, known for his medical expertise and dedication to his profession, had long been a pillar of the community. However, as the detectives delved deeper into his past, a different side of the doctor began to emerge. It was discovered that the Smith family, whom he had treated in the past, had sued Dr. Bleach for malpractice, alleging that his negligence had resulted in the blinding of several family members. This lawsuit had left a deep-seated grudge within the doctor's heart, a smoldering fire of resentment that could potentially drive him to commit a horrific act. As the investigators questioned Dr. Bleach, they unearthed a trove of unsettling details. The doctor's alibi for the day of Jenny's murder was flimsy at best, with no concrete evidence to support his claims. Furthermore, witnesses reported seeing him in the vicinity of Jenny's residence on that fateful day. The police painstakingly cross-referenced phone records, credit card statements, and surveillance footage, building a compelling case against the doctor. To further complicate matters, a series of anonymous letters had been sent to local news outlets, hinting at Dr. Bleach's involvement in the crime. These letters, postmarked from various cities across the country, contained chilling details that only someone intimately familiar with the case could know. The police, in collaboration with the FBI, analyzed the handwriting and linguistic patterns of the letters, hoping to find a clue that would lead them closer to the truth. As the investigation unfolded, the media circus surrounding the case intensified. The airwaves crackled with discussions on talk radio shows as armchair detectives offered their own theories and opinions. The city of Rochester, usually known for its serene beauty and picturesque landscapes, was now gripped by a sense of unease and fear. As the summer of 1993 drew to a close, the investigation into the murder of Jenny Smith Brosley took an unexpected turn. The police, armed with mounting evidence and a growing sense of urgency, were closing in on their suspect. But would Dr. Edward Bleach's calm demeanor crack under the weight of their relentless pursuit? Only time would tell. After an exhaustive investigation, law enforcement officials finally cracked the case surrounding the tragic murder of beloved kindergarten teacher Jenny Smith Brosley. The shocking revelation left the community of Rochester, New York, in a state of disbelief and mourning. The perpetrator of this heinous crime was identified as none other than Jenny's own sister, Sarah Canister. The motive behind this unimaginable act appeared to be a toxic combination of sexual jealousy and deep-rooted resentment towards her successful sibling. As the investigation unfolded, detectives stumbled upon a hidden diary belonging to Sarah. This diary, filled with disturbing entries, detailed her envy and bitterness towards Jenny's accomplishments. It provided a chilling glimpse into Sarah's troubled psyche and shed light on her sinister intentions. The plot thickened when evidence emerged that Sarah had seduced Jenny's estranged husband, Mark H. Smith, in an attempt to use her sexuality to manipulate him into aiding her in the murder. Mark, vulnerable and susceptible to Sarah's advances, became an unwitting pawn in this twisted game of deceit and betrayal. The police, armed with irrefutable evidence, swiftly apprehended Sarah. Her arrest sent shockwaves through the community as the true extent of her malevolence was laid bare for all to see. The once vibrant and vivacious Sarah had been harboring a dark secret, hidden beneath a facade of charm and wit. The revelation of Sarah's guilt left the victim's family shattered. Struggling to come to terms with the shocking betrayal, friends and loved ones of Jenny Smith Brosley have expressed their disbelief, grappling with the fact that someone so close to her could be capable of such a heinous act. The trial that followed the shocking revelation of Sarah Canister as Jenny Smith Brosley's murderer was filled with intense emotions and gripping courtroom drama. The trial took place in the historic Monroe County Courthouse, a grand building that had witnessed countless legal battles over the years. The courtroom was packed with reporters from local newspapers such as the Democrat and Chronicle, as well as television crews from stations like WROC-TV. The eyes of the nation were on Rochester as this high-profile case unfolded. District Attorney Emily Sullivan, a seasoned prosecutor known for her tenacity's case, was built on a mountain of evidence, including the damning diary entries found in Sarah's possession. These entries, written in Sarah's own hand, revealed her deep-seated jealousy and resentment towards her sister. The jury listened intently as the prosecution meticulously dissected each entry, painting a vivid picture of Sarah's motive and her calculated plan to eliminate her sister. To counter the prosecution's case, Sarah's defense attorney, Jacqueline Humbert, employed a range of tactics. Humbert called into question the reliability of the diary entries, arguing that they could have been fabricated or misinterpreted. She also attempted to cast doubt on the credibility of the witnesses, highlighting inconsistencies in their testimonies. After days of deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. Sarah Canister was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow. The victim's family, though relieved that justice had been served, could not escape the pain of their loss. Sarah, now convicted of this heinous crime, was led away in handcuffs, her face a mask of disbelief. The sentencing phase of the trial followed shortly after. In the end, the judge delivered his sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of the sentence sank in. Sarah, now condemned to spend the rest of her days behind bars, was led away, her fate sealed. As the trial concluded, the impact of this tragic case reverberated through the lives of the victim's friends and family. They were left to grapple with the shocking betrayal and the loss of a beloved sister and friend. The trial also left a lasting impression on the community, reminding them of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly ordinary lives. In the aftermath of the highly publicized trial that captivated the nation, the lives of all those involved took divergent paths. Mark H. Smith, the grief-stricken widower, sought solace in therapy and support groups, desperately trying to navigate the treacherous journey of healing. Haunted by guilt and plagued by the memories of his beloved wife, Mark found comfort in the warm embrace of his family and friends. Meanwhile, Sarah Canister, the convicted murderer, began her life sentence in a maximum security prison. Stripped of her freedom and facing the harsh reality of her actions, Sarah was left to confront the consequences of her heinous crime. Behind bars, she faced a long and arduous road towards redemption, with little hope of ever regaining the trust of those she had betrayed. The dedicated police investigators, Joseph and Lisa Anderson, continued their tireless pursuit of justice in other cases. Driven by a deep sense of duty and a burning desire to protect their community, they tirelessly worked to bring closure to other victims and their families. Their commitment to upholding the law and ensuring the safety of their fellow citizens remained unwavering. August of 1993 will forever be etched in the collective memory of the community as they grappled with the shocking betrayal and the profound impact it had on their lives. The trial had dominated headlines, capturing the attention of the nation and leaving an indelible mark on the city of Rochester. As we conclude this episode of True Crime Case Files, we are reminded of the darkness that can lurk behind closed doors. The tragic tale of Jenny Smith Brosley serves as a cautionary reminder of the depths to which jealousy and resentment can drive a person. Through the tireless efforts of law enforcement and the resilience of the victim's loved ones, justice was ultimately served. Boulder, Colorado, nestled among the majestic Rocky Mountains, lived Daniel Molinsky, a 46-year-old professor with a profound knowledge of geology. His life was a tapestry of dedication to science and personal battles. Yet, these struggles never overshadowed his reputation as a brilliant mind and a cherished educator at the University of Colorado. In March of 1988, the small town of Boulder, Colorado was abuzz with excitement as the spring semester began at the University of Colorado. Daniel Molinsky, with his salt and pepper hair and wire-frame glasses, was a familiar face among the faculty. Known for his captivating lectures on the geological wonders of the world, he had garnered a reputation as one of the most respected professors in his field. His office, cluttered with rock samples and geological maps, was a testament to his passion for the subject. But behind the scenes, Daniel's life was far from perfect. He had battled with alcohol addiction for years, and although he had managed to achieve sobriety, the scars of his past still haunted him. His struggle with bipolar disorder added another layer of complexity to his already turbulent life. Yet, despite these challenges, Daniel remained committed to his work and his family. His son Vincent, a bright and ambitious 13-year-old, was attending the Colorado School for the Deaf. Daniel, wanting to create a comfortable space for his son, had embarked on a project to convert the attic into a bedroom. He spent countless hours researching the best materials and meticulously planning the renovation. The attic was filled with boxes of insulation, tools, and blueprints, evidence of Daniel's unwavering love, even as he navigated the complexities of his own life and his marriage to his wife, Sandra. Amidst this backdrop, Daniel's death struck a chord of mystery. Was it an unfortunate accident, a desperate act of suicide, or something more nefarious? As we delve deeper into this enigma, we invite you to join us on this journey of discovery. Together, we will explore the life and untimely demise of Daniel Molinsky. On that fateful day in March 1988, the tranquil city of Boulder, Colorado was basking in the warmth of a clear and calm afternoon. The residents went about their daily routines, unaware that tragedy was about to strike the peaceful neighborhood. Daniel Molinsky, a 46-year-old esteemed professor of geology at the University of Colorado, was engrossed in a home improvement project. He had been diligently working on converting his attic into a cozy bedroom for his beloved son, Vincent, a student at the Colorado School for the Deaf who eagerly anticipated the completion of his new space. As the afternoon sun cast its gentle glow upon the picturesque landscape, Daniel, with his tools in hand, ascended the ladder to install a window in the attic. It was a routine task for him, having spent years honing his handyman skills. However, on this fateful day, tragedy struck with a merciless force. In a sudden and inexplicable turn of events, Daniel lost his footing and plummeted to his untimely demise. The deafening silence of the fall was shattered by the anguished cry of Sandra Molinsky, Daniel's wife and a professor of English literature at the same university. The shock and disbelief that washed over her were palpable as she stood there, frozen in the face of this unimaginable tragedy. Sandra, her heart pounding, immediately dialed emergency services, her trembling fingers struggling to find the right buttons on the rotary phone. The authorities were dispatched with urgency, racing against time to unravel the mysteries surrounding Daniel's death. As news of the tragic incident spread, the tight-knit community of Boulder was left reeling. The local newspaper, the Boulder Daily Camera, covered the story extensively, capturing the collective sorrow that gripped the town. Friends, colleagues, and students mourned the loss of a man who had left an indelible mark on their lives. The investigation into Daniel Molinsky's death began in earnest, with the Boulder Police Department meticulously examining the scene for any clues or signs of foul play. The media attention surrounding the case intensified, with television stations like KMGH-TV and KCNC-TV reporting on the ongoing investigation, hoping to shed light on the enigma that had shattered the tranquility of Boulder. The Boulder Police Department swiftly responded to the distress call from Sandra Molinsky, who had discovered her husband's lifeless body. Led by seasoned investigator Detective Michael J. Miller, known for his meticulousness, the team arrived at the scene prepared to unravel the mysteries surrounding Daniel Molinsky's tragic death. The attic, where the incident occurred, was meticulously examined by the investigators. The room appeared to be in pristine condition, devoid of any signs of struggle or disturbance. The investigators carefully combed through every inch of the space, searching for clues that could shed light on the circumstances leading to Daniel's demise. As they meticulously analyzed the attic, the investigators took note of the window that Daniel had been installing before his fall. They examined the window frame, checking for any signs of faulty installation or structural issues that could have contributed to the tragedy. They also inspected the tools and materials present in the vicinity, looking for any potential hazards or malfunctions. To gain a comprehensive understanding of the events leading up to Daniel's fall, the investigators interviewed Sandra Molinsky and other individuals close to the deceased. They learned that Daniel had been working tirelessly on converting the attic into a bedroom for their son, Vincent. It was an ambitious project, and Daniel had been eagerly preparing the space for his son's arrival. During the interviews, the investigators discovered that Daniel had been struggling with bipolar disorder and was a recovering alcoholic. They delved into his medical history, seeking to determine if these factors played a role in his untimely demise. They reached out to medical professionals, seeking expert opinions on the potential impact of these conditions on Daniel's mental and physical well-being. The investigators, determined to leave no stone unturned, reviewed the evidence collected thus far. They consulted with forensic experts, seeking their insights into the cause of Daniel's fall. Every detail was examined, from the angle of the fall to the presence of any substances that could have impaired Daniel's judgment. With each passing day, the investigation grew more complex, as the investigators worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind Daniel Molinsky's tragic death. Sandra Molinsky, a 42-year-old professor of English literature at the University of Colorado, found herself at the center of the investigation into the mysterious death of her husband, Daniel Molinsky. The couple's tumultuous relationship had long been a topic of gossip among their colleagues and friends, with witnesses recalling heated arguments and public displays of discord. One witness, who wished to remain anonymous, claimed to have seen Sandra and Daniel engaged in a heated argument outside a local coffee shop just days before the tragic incident. They were shouting at each other, and Sandra looked furious. The witness recounted, "I couldn't hear the details, but it seemed like a serious disagreement." The police, armed with this information, focused their attention on Sandra as the primary suspect in the case. The investigators delved into the couple's troubled marriage, uncovering a shocking revelation. Sandra had been involved in an illicit affair with Zoe Bwick, a 22-year-old English literature student at the university. Zoe, a striking young woman with a passion for literature, had captured Sandra's heart and led her down a path of deceit. The affair had been going on for several months, and Daniel, a recovering alcoholic diagnosed with bipolar disorder, had only discovered his wife's infidelity 2 days before his death. Sources close to the couple claimed that Daniel had confronted Sandra about her affair just a day before his tragic fall. The police interrogated Sandra, looking for any signs of guilt or motive. During the intense questioning, Sandra displayed a range of emotions, from anger to sorrow. She vehemently denied any involvement in her husband's death, insisting that their arguments were merely a result of the strain in their marriage. As the investigation continued, the police discovered Sandra's had no alibi for the time of Daniel's fatal fall. They interviewed neighbors, checked surveillance footage, and reviewed credit card statements, leaving no stone unturned. The revelation of Sandra's presence at the house during Daniel's fall added a new layer of complexity to the case. The investigators now had to determine whether Sandra's presence was coincidental or if it held a more sinister meaning. In the investigation into the mysterious death of Daniel Molinsky, a new person of interest emerged: Zoe Bwick, a 22-year-old English literature student. Zoe's involvement in an affair with Sandra Molinsky, Daniel's wife, raised suspicions and made her a compelling suspect in this puzzling case. At the time of Daniel's tragic fall, Zoe was a student at the University of Colorado, where Sandra also taught English literature. She was a petite and bookish young woman, was known for her love for the novels of erotic novelist Joyce Lehman and her admiration for Sandra's intellect. Zoe's motive for potentially harming Daniel stemmed from her desire to be with Sandra and escape the confines of their secret relationship. The affair had been going on for several months, and the two women had managed to keep it hidden from the prying eyes of their colleagues and friends. It was an illicit love affair that had the potential to ruin both their personal and professional lives. On the day of Daniel's death, Zoe had arranged a secret meeting with Sandra. They had planned to meet at a local coffee shop, the Daily Grind, which was a popular hangout spot for students and faculty alike. The coffee shop was known for its cozy atmosphere and delicious pastries, making it a perfect place for clandestine meetings. The police, aware of this meeting, questioned Zoe extensively about her interactions with Sandra on that fateful day. Zoe displayed a combination of fear and defiance during the interrogation, adding an air of intrigue to the investigation. She adamantly denied any involvement in Daniel's death, claiming that she had no knowledge of his plans or the circumstances surrounding his fatal fall. As the investigation progressed, the police diligently examined phone records, analyzing fingerprints found at the crime scene, and interviewing potential witnesses determined to uncover the truth behind Daniel Molinsky's tragic demise. As the investigation into the death of Daniel Molinsky progressed, the police made a startling discovery. On a day not long after Daniel's tragic fall, they stumbled upon a hidden letter in the possession of Sandra Molinsky, his wife and primary suspect in the case. This letter, written in a state of emotional turmoil, provided a glimpse into the depth of Sandra's affair with Zoe Bwick, a 22-year-old English lit student. The contents of the letter were both shocking and disturbing. In the letter, Sandra expressed her desire for Daniel to just die, a chilling statement that sent shivers down the spines of the investigators. It also revealed her resentment towards Daniel, blaming him for their son Vincent's deafness. The letter painted a picture of a tumultuous relationship fraught with secrets and hidden desires. The police meticulously analyzed this newfound evidence, hoping it would provide crucial insights into the case. They sought the assistance of forensic experts, hoping to link it definitively to Sandra and establish its authenticity. They also reached out to handwriting analysts to compare the writing in the letter to known samples of Sandra's handwriting. As news of the investigation spread, the media seized upon the sensational nature of the case. Newspapers and television stations across Boulder were abuzz with speculation and theories. Journalists camped outside the Molinsky residence, hoping to catch a glimpse of Sandra or Zoe, who had become local celebrities in their own right. The case took a surprising turn when a witness came forward, claiming to have seen Sandra and Zoe arguing vehemently in a local cafe on the day of Daniel's death. This witness, a regular patron of the cafe, provided a detailed description of the heated exchange, further fueling suspicions of foul play. With each passing day, the investigation into the death of Daniel Molinsky grew more complex. The police painstakingly sifted through the evidence, determined to uncover the truth behind this puzzling case. Vincent Molinsky, the 13-year-old son of Daniel and Sandra, was also present in their Boulder, Colorado home on that fateful day in March 1988. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they considered the possibility that Vincent may have witnessed or inadvertently played a role in his father's death. They meticulously analyzed his movements and actions leading up to the incident, leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of the truth. During their investigation, the police discovered that Vincent's current bedroom was located just below the attic where his father met his untimely demise. This detail increased the possibility of Vincent witnessing the actual fall. Furthermore, the investigators interviewed Vincent's classmates and teachers at the Colorado school for the death, seeking any information that could shed light on his behavior or potential involvement in his father's death. They found no evidence to suggest that Vincent had exhibited any unusual behavior or had any knowledge of the events transpiring at his home. In fact, Vincent's teachers described him as a diligent and focused student who showed no signs of distress or distraction during the days leading up to his father's tragic accident. They emphasized that Vincent was fully engaged in his studies in ASL, displaying a keen interest in his classes and maintaining a positive attitude. Ultimately, the evidence pointed to Vincent's innocence. The young boy had been engrossed in playing Super Mario Bros. In his bedroom, completely unaware of the tragedy unfolding in his own home. The investigators concluded that he played no role in his father's death. Following an extensive investigation into the mysterious death of Daniel Molinsky, they have honed in on a prime suspect. Sandra Molinsky, a respected professor of English Lit at the University of Colorado, was charged with the murder of her husband. The authorities diligently pieced together the puzzle, uncovering a web of deceit and betrayal. It was revealed that Sandra had been engaged in a secret affair with Zoe Bronwick, a 22-year-old English Lit student. The affair, which had been ongoing for several months, was discovered by Daniel just a day before his tragic fall. This revelation sent shockwaves through the couple's already strained marriage. Witnesses had often seen Sandra and Daniel engaged in heated arguments in public, hinting at the tumultuous nature of their relationship. The police delved into the couple's personal history, discovering that Sandra blamed Daniel for their son's deafness. This revelation added another layer of complexity to the case, as it shed light on the deep-seated resentment Sandra harbored towards her husband. On the day of the incident, Sandra and Zoe had a secret meeting, unbeknownst to Daniel. The police questioned Zoe extensively, her demeanor oscillating between fear and defiance. Her involvement in the affair, coupled with the clandestine meeting, made her a compelling suspect. Crucial evidence emerged when the police discovered a hidden letter in Sandra's possession. The letter, penned by Sandra herself, revealed the depth of her emotional turmoil and her desire for Daniel to just die. It also contained sexually explicit details about her affair with Zoe and her blame towards Daniel for their son's condition. This newfound evidence provided valuable insights into Sandra's mindset leading up to the tragic events. The investigation also focused on Vincent Molinsky, the couple's 13-year-old deaf son. The police initially considered the possibility that Vincent may have witnessed or inadvertently played a role in his father's death. However, after a thorough examination, his innocence became clear. He was merely playing Super Mario Bros. In his bedroom, oblivious to the unfolding tragedy. Through mostly circumstantial evidence, the police built a strong case against Sandra Molinsky. Her motive, the discovery of the affair, combined with the resentment she harbored towards her husband, painted a compelling picture of a woman driven to silence Daniel. The evidence pointed towards a premeditated act planned to appear as an accident. As the case unfolded, the public eagerly awaited the trial of Sandra Molinsky, a trial expected to shed further light on the events surrounding Daniel's death and provide closure for those affected by this tragic loss. The trial of Sandra Molinsky, the primary suspect in the death of her husband, Daniel Molinsky, captivated Colorado in March of 1988. The courtroom, located in the Boulder County Courthouse, a historic building located in downtown Boulder, Colorado, was filled with anticipation as the prosecution and defense presented their cases, each determined to sway the jury in their favor. The prosecution, led by renowned District Attorney Jonathan Thompson, meticulously built his case against Sandra. They presented a series of witnesses, including neighbors who had heard arguments between Sandra and Daniel, as well as friends who had witnessed their strained marriage. The prosecution also introduced evidence of Sandra's affair with Zoe Bronwick, a young English lit student. The defense, represented by Lisabel Thompson, who coincidentally was Jonathan's estranged wife, on the other hand, questioned the credibility of the evidence against Sandra. She argued that the affair between Sandra and Zoe did not prove she was capable of murder. She viscously took apart the police investigation, pointing out inconsistencies and raising doubts about the prosecution's case. As she noted, the evidence was all circumstance and based almost solely on Sandra's failures as a wife. Throughout the trial, the victim's family, including Daniel and Sandra's deaf son, Vincent Molinsky, sat in the courtroom, hoping for justice. Now a 14-year-old student at the Colorado School for the Deaf, Vincent sat quietly, his eyes fixed on his mother. The trial lasted for weeks, with the prosecution and defense presenting their witnesses and evidence. Finally, after careful deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the foreperson stood up and pronounced Sandra Molinsky not guilty. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the family, the defense, and even some members of the public expressed shock and disbelief. The outcome left many questioning whether justice had truly been served. In the aftermath, the trial of Sandra Molinsky became a topic of discussion among legal experts and true crime fanboys alike. The Boulder County Courthouse returned to its usual business, but the echoes of this captivating trial lingered in the minds of all those who followed the case. In the aftermath of the highly publicized trial, the lives of those involved in the Daniel Molinsky case took divergent paths. Sandra Molinsky, the accused wife, now a free woman, faced the arduous task of rebuilding her life and reputation. She made the decision to return to her home country of the United Kingdom, seeking solace in the familiar surroundings of her childhood. Meanwhile, Zoe Bronwick, the young woman at the center of the affair, quietly graduated from the University of Colorado and disappeared from the public eye. Her whereabouts remained unknown, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. As for Vincent Molinsky, the deaf son of Daniel and Sandra, he embarked on a journey of healing and resilience. With the support of the Colorado School for the Deaf, Vincent found solace in his studies and extracurricular activities. He excelled academically, displaying a keen interest in science and mathematics. Vincent's story of triumph over adversity captured the attention of local news outlets, who dubbed him the deaf prodigy. The Daniel Molinsky case, which unfolded in the tranquil town of Boulder, Colorado, in March of 1988, left an enduring impact on the lives of those involved. The trial's outcome, with Sandra Molinsky's acquittal, left many questioning whether justice had truly been served. The echoes of the case continued to reverberate through the community, serving as a reminder of the fragility of human relationships and the complexities of the human psyche. The case of Daniel Molinsky's death remains an enigma. Was it a tragic accident, a desperate act of suicide, or a calculated murder? Despite the acquittal of Sandra Molinsky, the truth remains elusive. In the heart of America's breadbasket, Omaha, Nebraska, Melanie Vandermeer, a 34-year-old bank employee, lived a life marked by ambition and familial love. A graduate of Creighton University, she had majored in finance, a field she navigated with precision and passion. As a mother to 3-month-old Addison and wife to Peter Vandermeer, Melanie's life was a tapestry of modern motherhood and career aspirations. Melanie's colleagues at the First National Bank of Omaha knew her as a diligent worker, often staying late to ensure her clients' needs were met. Her LinkedIn profile, a relatively new phenomenon in June of 2005, showcased endorsements for her financial acumen and dedication. At home, Melanie was the nucleus of her family, her relationship with her husband Peter appearing to be a testament to partnership and mutual support, at least on the surface. Her family, including her sister Emily and parents John and Diane, were fixtures in her life. They often gathered for Sunday dinners, a tradition that Melanie cherished. These intimate gatherings were a blend of old and new, where stories from the past mingled with discussions of the latest episode of Desperate Housewives, a show Melanie enjoyed for its portrayal of complex women. Melanie's dreams extended beyond the confines of her immediate world. She envisioned a future where her daughter would have opportunities she had worked hard to secure. Only days before her death, Melanie had excitedly spoken of plans to enroll Addison in the prestigious Brownell Talbot School, ensuring a head start for her education. As Melanie and Peter boarded their flight to Cancun, a couple's only trip to celebrate their second marriage anniversary, her thoughts were a mix of anticipation for the sandy beaches she'd seen in Travel and Leisure magazine and a well-deserved break from the rigors of new parenthood. Little did she know that this journey to paradise would be her last. On June 15, 2005, as the early morning sun cast a golden hue over the white sands of Cancun, a grim discovery disrupted the serene ambience of this tropical haven. At approximately 6:30 a.m., with the resort town slowly stirring to life, Maria Hernandez, an 82-year-old local known for her daily beachcombing rituals, stumbled upon a scene that would haunt the peaceful shores and make headlines far beyond the Yucatan Peninsula. The body of Melanie Vandermeer, still clad in a J.Crew bikini, a popular brand featured in the summer catalogs of that year, was found lifeless, embraced by the gentle yet relentless waves of the Gulf of Mexico. Maria, who had lived through the transformation of Cancun from a sleepy fishing village to a bustling tourist hotspot, was no stranger to the occasional aftermath of nighttime revelries left on the beach. However, the sight of Melanie's body was an inconceivable departure from the norm. The local authorities were notified promptly, thanks to a nearby tourist who lent Maria his Nokia cell phone, a device that had become a staple in the connectivity of the era. The police arrived on the scene with a sense of urgency, a response time reflecting the gravity of the situation and the potential impact on Cancun's image as a safe and exotic getaway, frequently featured in the pages of Condé Nast Traveler. The weather, typically idyllic for this time of year, seemed to mourn with a somber sky and a gentle breeze that offered no solace to the first responders. The beach, usually adorned with sun loungers and vibrant umbrellas, was now cordoned off with yellow tape, standing in stark contrast to the picturesque setting that had drawn Melanie and countless others to its shores. Maria, with decades of life etched into her weathered face, displayed a stoic calmness that belied the shock of her discovery. Her statement to the police was clear and concise, providing the initial narrative to what would become a complex and heart-wrenching investigation into the untimely death of a young mother and wife. The arrival of the Quintana Roo police at the now secluded section of Cancun's coastline was swift, a testament to the Mexican authorities' commitment to maintaining the resort's image, as depicted in glossy brochures, a sun-soaked retreat from the daily grind. Detectives Alejandro Ruiz and Sofia Blanco, seasoned officers with years of experience between them, were met with a scene that juxtaposed the natural beauty of the locale with a chilling narrative. The date was June 15, 2005, a time when the world's eyes were often fixed on the developments of the Iraq War, broadcasted by CNN and other 24-hour news channels. Yet here, the only conflict was between the tranquility of the resort town and the violence suggested by the discovery at its shore. The weather, a balmy 82 degrees with a light breeze, seemed incongruous with the gravity of the crime scene. Detective Ruiz, with his stern demeanor and sharp eye for detail, noted the absence of struggle. The sand around Melanie's body was undisturbed, save for the impressions left by Maria Hernandez's early morning discovery. Detective Blanco, known for her empathy and keen intuition, observed the victim's peaceful expression, a stark contrast to the brutality of her demise. The crime scene was devoid of the expected chaos that accompanies violence. There was no blood, no signs of a conventional struggle. The detectives surmised that Melanie had been drowned, a hypothesis that would later be confirmed by the medical examiner. The Gulf waters had cleansed any immediate evidence, leaving the investigators to rely on forensic methods that were becoming increasingly sophisticated, even as shows like CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, popularized them to the public. The police meticulously documented the scene, utilizing digital cameras, a relatively new addition to their investigative toolkit, to capture the area in detail. They collected samples of sand and water near the body, hoping that the burgeoning field of forensic science might yield microscopic clues. The absence of Melanie's personal effects suggested a robbery or an attempt to conceal her identity, complicating the case further. As the sun climbed higher, casting a harsh light on the grim task at hand, the detectives knew that the answers they sought might be as elusive as the motives behind this tragic end to a vacation that promised relaxation and renewal. As the investigation into Melanie Vandermeer's untimely death unfolded, the focus turned to her husband, Peter Vandermeer, a 35-year-old financial advisor. Amidst the swaying palms and sun-soaked beaches of Cancun, a stark contrast to the couple's quiet life in Omaha, Nebraska, Peter found himself at the center of a murder inquiry. With a reputation for ambition and a seemingly unwavering commitment to his family, Peter's life was under intense scrutiny. Peter's communications were being combed through by local authorities. Detectives sifted through call logs and messages, searching for inconsistencies in his account of their vacation, which coincided with the 2005 MTV Movie Awards buzz, an event Melanie had been excited to discuss during their trip. During the interrogation, held within the stark walls of the Cancun Police Department, Peter's composure was as fluctuating as the stock market he navigated for a living. He spoke of their plans to visit the renowned Chichen Itza ruins and how they had dined at the Hard Rock Cafe Cancun just the night before Melanie's disappearance. Yet, when pressed about rumors of marital strife, his demeanor shifted. His hands, which had calmly folded a napkin from the cafe into neat squares on the table, now clenched into fists. The detectives noted Peter's agitation when they inquired about the couple's financial situation, which was reportedly strained due to his recent investment in the real estate boom, considered precarious by some after the 2005 housing market predictions. Peter vehemently denied any discord, attributing any perceived tension to the normal stress of parenting a new baby and Melanie's ambition to ascend the corporate ladder at her bank. However, the police had uncovered evidence of several heated exchanges between Peter and Melanie, captured by the hotel's security cameras. These exchanges painted a picture of a relationship fraying at the edges, despite the idyllic setting. The investigation was further complicated by the discovery of a substantial life insurance policy taken out on Melanie, with Peter as the sole beneficiary, a common trope in true crime tales that raised eyebrows among the investigators. As the interrogation stretched into the evening, the detectives were aware that the burden of proof lay heavy on their shoulders. Cancun, a city pulsating with the rhythm of nightlife and the whispers of Caribbean winds, was now the backdrop of a narrative that had shifted from romantic getaway to sinister plot. The investigation into Melanie Vandermeer's death took a dramatic turn with the questioning of Tommy Walker, a 23-year-old Australian backpacker whose nomadic lifestyle had led him to the white sands of Cancun. His rugged charm and the allure of adventure had captivated Melanie, resulting in a clandestine affair that now placed him in the crosshairs of a murder investigation. Tommy's arrival in Cancun had been part of a broader itinerary that included the world's most exotic locales, a journey he meticulously documented on his blog, a popular medium in the burgeoning age of social media. His digital footprint, including check-ins at Cancun's Coco Bongo Club the night of June 14th, provided the police with a timeline of his movements. The interrogation took place against the backdrop of a series of benefit concerts aimed at combating global poverty, mirroring the stark contrast between Tommy's free-spirited existence and the gravity of the situation at hand. His defense was as unwavering as the global resolve to make poverty history. Detectives probed Tommy about his relationship with Melanie, questioning whether jealousy might have driven him to an act of violence. The Australian, sporting a billabong tank top and a sunburned demeanor, maintained his innocence. He recounted their last meeting, insisting it was nothing more than a farewell before he continued his travels to the next destination on his list, which included the recently opened Disneyland Hong Kong. Despite his assertions of innocence, the police were skeptical. The affair had been a poorly kept secret, whispers of which had even reached the ears of the staff at the Moon Palace resort where the Vandermeers were staying. Tommy's passport and belongings were seized, revealing a postcard addressed to Melanie, the message on the back unfinished and a tone, one of longing. As the interrogation concluded, Tommy's fate hung in the balance, much like the Space Shuttle Discovery, which was grounded due to fuel sensor issues, delaying its much-anticipated return to flight. The investigators were left to ponder whether Tommy Walker's desire for freedom had been eclipsed by a darker impulse. On June 17th, as Cancun's tourist throngs reveled in the summer heat, a breakthrough emerged in the Van der Meer case. A local vendor, sifting through the sands to set up his beachside souvenir stand, unearthed Melanie's missing purse. The discovery, mere meters from the Moon Palace Resort, reignited the investigation with newfound urgency. The sandy handbag, a Coach leather tote, a recent anniversary gift from Peter, contained more than the usual vacationer's essentials. Among the items were Melanie's hotel key card, a half-empty bottle of Banana Boat sunscreen, and a torn piece of paper that bore an enigmatic message written in what appeared to be Melanie's own hand. The cryptic note, partially smeared by sunscreen, seemed to be an unfinished sentence or a hastily scribbled thought. It read, "Meet me where the sun whispers goodbye," a phrase that detectives speculated could point to a clandestine meeting on the beach, perhaps with her lover, Tommy, or another unknown individual. The contents of the purse were meticulously cataloged and analyzed. Forensic technicians dusted for fingerprints, while digital specialists attempted to extract any latent data from the keycard, which might shed light on her final movements, a technique growing in sophistication. The case had all the hallmarks of a sensational story, a picturesque setting, a young mother's tragic end, and a narrative rife with potential jealousy and betrayal. As the summer sun set on another day in paradise, the investigation into Melanie Van der Meer's death had taken a significant turn. The authorities hoped the purse would be a game-changer in uncovering the truth behind the tragedy. The serene shores of Cancun, usually a refuge for sunseekers, became the backdrop for a complex investigation as attention shifted to Maria Hernandez, the 82-year-old local who first stumbled upon Melanie Van der Meer's body. Maria, a fixture on the beach, supported her family through what tourists left behind, her life story a stark contrast to the carefree vacationers surrounding her. Detectives delved into Maria's background, uncovering a life marked by resilience and hardship. Her daily routine, as unchanging as the tides, involved combing the beach each morning, a practice she had maintained for decades. This consistency, coupled with her discovery of the body, prompted authorities to consider her a person of interest. During her questioning, which took place in a room that felt as cold and clinical as the air-conditioned lobbies of the nearby luxury resorts, Maria maintained a stoic composure. Her account was detailed and precise, reminiscent of the factual reporting style seen in the pages of National Geographic, which featured an article on the resilience of the elderly. Investigators probed for a motive, speculating on a theft gone wrong. However, Maria's history was devoid of any criminal entanglements. Much like the pristine beaches she walked were free of the seaweed that often washed ashore elsewhere. Her hands, weathered from years of labor, showed no signs of a struggle, and her alibi for the time of Melanie's disappearance was corroborated by other locals. As the interrogation unfolded, Maria, despite the investigators' initial suspicions, emerged more as a witness than a perpetrator. The detectives concluded their session with Maria, her account leaving them with more questions than answers. The pursuit of justice for Melanie Van der Meer continued, the case unfolding like the plot of a John Grisham novel, each chapter revealing new complexities. The investigation into Melanie Van der Meer's death culminated in a revelation that would shock the tranquil community of Cancun. The evidence meticulously gathered and analyzed by local law enforcement pointed to one individual, Peter Van der Meer, the victim's husband. The man who had presented himself as a grieving spouse was unmasked as the architect of a premeditated murder. Peter's facade began to crumble as detectives pieced together a timeline that contradicted his initial statements. Hotel surveillance footage, time-stamped and unambiguous in its storytelling, showed Peter's movements on the night of Melanie's disappearance. The footage, as revealing as the exposés featured in Time magazine, contradicted his alibi. Further incriminating evidence emerged from the couple's electronic devices. Emails retrieved from Melanie's BlackBerry, a device that had become synonymous with business communications, revealed a marriage fraught with tension and conflict. Peter's own laptop, a sleek Dell Inspiron which had been advertised as the perfect tool for the on-the-go professional, contained deleted files that were recovered by forensic experts. These files included internet searches for life insurance payouts and the effects of saltwater drowning. The case against Peter Van der Meer was becoming as clear as the high-definition images broadcasted by a newly launched HD channel. The motive was a tapestry of betrayal, humiliation, and financial gain. Peter had learned of Melanie's affair through a message on her Nokia phone, a model praised for its reliability, and the revelation had ignited a murderous plan fueled by jealousy and rage. In the days leading up to the murder, Peter had been seen purchasing a large life insurance policy on Melanie, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. This policy, coupled with the couple's recent enrollment in an American Express travel insurance plan, painted a grim picture of premeditation. As the local community absorbed the news, the idyllic image of Cancun was temporarily overshadowed by a narrative of domestic tragedy. The case against Peter Vandermeer was airtight, his arrest imminent, and the facade of the perfect family holiday was shattered forever. As the tropical storm clouds gathered over Cancun's horizon on June 20th, a different tempest was unfolding within the confines of the local police station. Peter Vandermeer, once the bereaved husband, was apprehended by authorities in connection with the murder of his wife, Melanie Vandermeer. The arrest marked a somber resolution to a case that had gripped the seaside city. The evidence against Peter had mounted steadily, with the meticulous work of the Cancun detectives mirroring the precision of a Swiss watch, a symbol of the same luxury Peter aspired to provide for his family. The detectives had constructed a detailed timeline of Melanie's final hours, corroborated by hotel surveillance footage and witness testimonies, which now pointed irrefutably to Peter's involvement. His apprehension occurred discreetly, away from the prying lenses of tourist digital cameras, which were becoming increasingly prevalent. Much like the Canon EOS 350D that had been released earlier that year, Peter's demeanor during the arrest was one of disbelief. He appeared as disoriented as someone waking from a dream, his reality irrevocably altered. The news of Peter's arrest spread quickly, traveling through the channels of local media with fervor. The case had all the elements of a primetime drama, and public interest was piqued. Melanie's family, who had flown in from Nebraska, a state known for its rolling plains rather than sandy beaches, was present at the station. The mix of emotions was palpable: relief at the progress of the investigation, intertwined with the profound grief of loss. The Vandermeer family had been regular attendees at the Heartland Church back home, seeking solace in their faith, which was now tested in the most tragic of circumstances. As Peter was escorted to a holding cell, the storm outside unleashed its fury on Cancun. The sound of rain on the police station roof provided a grim soundtrack to the unfolding events. The arrest marked the beginning of a new chapter in the case, one that would lead to the judicial system where evidence would be weighed and a verdict rendered. The trial of Peter Vandermeer, set against the backdrop of a Cancun summer, commenced with the weight of expectation. The evidence laid out before the court was as compelling as the latest investigative series gracing the cover of Rolling Stone. Hotel surveillance footage, email correspondences, and the damning life insurance policy painted a portrait of a man driven to the brink by infidelity and financial desire. Defense attorney Miguel Torres, known for his advocacy as robust as the defense strategies outlined in John Grisham's legal thrillers, pleaded for leniency. He highlighted Peter's lack of criminal history and his role as a father, drawing a parallel to the public's sympathy for Martha Stewart, who had recently returned to the limelight after her own legal battles. The courtroom, with its charged atmosphere, could have been the set of a courtroom drama series, a stark contrast to the usual tranquility of the seaside town. Melanie's family, a constant presence in the gallery, clung to each other, their emotions as turbulent as the stormy season that had just passed. When the verdict was announced, the word guilty resonated through the room, definitive and irrevocable. The sentencing that followed was severe, as if to match the gravity of Peter's actions. The judge cited the premeditated nature of the crime, delivering a sentence that ensured Peter would spend the majority of his remaining years behind bars. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy was reminiscent of the buzz surrounding the Live 8 concerts, which had taken place that same summer. Opinions on the verdict were divided. Some felt justice had been served, while others debated the complexities of the human heart and the concept of retribution. As the Vandermeer case closed, the family left the courthouse to begin the arduous process of healing. The foundation established in Melanie's name promised to keep her memory alive, a testament to the enduring spirit of a life taken too soon. In the wake of the trial that captivated Cancun, life gradually resumed its rhythm. Maria Hernandez, the elderly beachcomber who had discovered Melanie Vandermeer's body, returned to her daily search for treasures along the shore. The brief brush with the law had left an imprint on her, yet it became just another story in her long life, much like the tale she shared with her grandchildren. Tommy Walker, the Australian backpacker whose affair with Melanie had entangled him in the investigation, continued his global journey. However, the carefree spirit he once embodied seemed dimmed. The beaches of Cancun were replaced by new horizons, but his travel blog, now with a more reflective tone, occasionally hinted at the shadows of the past. The detectives who had worked tirelessly on the case, Alejandro Ruiz and Sofia Blanco, received commendations for their dedication. Their success in solving the case was discussed in law enforcement circles with the same respect as the latest advancements in forensic technology featured in journals like Forensic Magazine. Melanie's family, back in Omaha, sought to honor her memory through activism. The foundation they established focused on supporting victims of domestic violence, a mission that provided a channel for their grief and a legacy for Melanie. The foundation's work garnered attention, much like the social justice causes championed by celebrities at the Live 8 concerts that summer. The Vandermeer case had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind the facade of marital bliss. It served as a narrative that echoed the complexities of human relationships explored in popular shows like Desperate Housewives, which dominated television screens at the time. As Cancun's palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze and the turquoise waters of the Gulf of Mexico continued to lap at the sandy beaches, the tragedy of Melanie Vandermeer remained a poignant chapter in the city's history, a story of paradise lost to the destructive forces of jealousy and revenge. The tragic case of Melanie Vandermeer reminds us that paradise can sometimes mask the darkest of human emotions. As we close this chapter of True Crime Case Files, we are left to ponder the fragility of life and the lengths to which a broken heart will go to seek retribution.